Okay. Well, I would like to welcome everybody to the Environmental Quality Commission's meeting on August 19th, 2020 for the City of Menlo Park. This meeting is a teleconference meeting with the Environmental Quality Commission, city staff, and members of the public participating remotely to ensure proper social distancing in during a federal, state, and local emergency. We'll start with roll call. So my name is Ryan Price. I'm the chair of the EQC, and I'd like to introduce each of the EQC members who are here with us today. So I'll start with Commissioner Josie Gaylord. Do you want to raise your hand, or thank you? Commissioner Tom Cabot.
Here.
Commissioner Janelle London.
Here.
Commissioner Deb Martin.
Here. And
we have two commissioners who are absent today, Commissioner Payne, James Payne, the vice chair, and Commissioner Rebecca Turley. So they are not joining us. The staff who are here with us today include the Sustainability Manager, Rebecca Lucky, the Sustainability Analyst, Joanna Chen, and our City Arborist, Christian. And I'm sorry, I'm completely blanking on your last name, Christian.
Christian Bonner, thank you.
Bonner, thank you. Sorry about that. So thank you all for joining us. Ms. Lucky, if I can ask you to please provide instructions to the EQC and members of the public on how this meeting will proceed. I think you might be on mute.
Sorry, hold on.
That's okay.
Make sure thank you. Camera is on as well. Thank you, Chair Price and members of the Environmental Quality Commission. Welcome everyone to the August 19th meeting of the Environmental Quality Commission, and thank you for attending. At this time, we ask the members of the EQC to please remain on screen for the duration of the meeting. You will control your own webcams and microphones. Staff will engage webcams and microphones to make presentations and to respond to the members of the EQC. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment, after the chair calls for public comment on an item you wish to speak on, please engage the raised hand feature. You can use that by going to the chat box or your own name, and you'll be able to raise your hand. I will then have the ability to open your microphone, and then you can provide your public comment to the EQC. I just want to also make mention, because there is a heritage tree appeal on this agenda item, that there is a little bit more engagement with some of the attendees in this meeting. And so the way the process goes is that staff will give a presentation, then the appellant will have the opportunity to make a presentation for up to 15 minutes, as well as, and then after the appellant, then it will be the permit applicant who will have also 15 minutes to present to the Environmental Quality Commission. And then any members outside of the appellant or the permit applicant will have 3 minutes to provide public comments. This concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lucky. So now it's the time to call for public comment. So under public comment, the public may address the EQC on any subject that is not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the public comment 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The EQC cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the EQC cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment, other than to provide general information. Ms. Lucky, do we have any public comments to consider?
Thank you, Chair Price. I believe I do have a hand raised by Fischwagen. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but I will open up your mic now.
Hi, thanks. This is Bishwas, and I am with a company called Yellowton, and we are based in Sunnyvale. I want to take the opportunity to introduce Yellowton. We are an online platform focused on educating consumers on the benefits of electrification and clean energy, so that they can clearly understand the benefits in terms of dollar savings, carbon emissions for their own home, and they can really start focusing towards electrifying their home. Hello?
I'm sorry.
Sorry, yeah. Our goal is to build consumer confidence and to give consumers all the information they need versus having to rely on information from a contractor or having to search for information. And our approach is to provide a personalized dashboard where we understand their energy usage, we understand their lifestyle choices, and the dashboard presents clean energy options such as solar, EV, heat pump water heaters, air source heat pumps, heat pump dryers, induction cooktop, battery storage, e-bikes. So we bring a whole portfolio of electrification, fuel switching, and then power that kilowatt hours through solar energy. We went into a contract with Sonoma Clean Power earlier this year, and we are launching towards educating their residential ratepayers. And we did a launch recently, a soft launch. We are also approved in budget by the city of Mountain View, and will be rolling out to their residents in this fall. Again, the same goal, to educate their residents on the benefits of clean electrification so that the city can enhance its climate action plan goals. I understand Menlo Park is very aggressive in its electrification goals. And so we would love the opportunity to introduce Yellowton to the city staff members and explore how we can really enable this city residents to move toward 100% electrification. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Vijwa. Are there other public comments, Ms. Lucky?
No, no further public comments.
Excellent. That being the case, we can move on to regular business. So under regular business, the EQC considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require EQC approval. So on our agenda this evening, the first other item under regular business is D1, which is approval of the June 24th, 2020 minutes.
I move to accept the minutes.
Janelle's seconding, but I think you have to say it out loud.
I second that.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So it's a unanimous vote of approval of the minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just want to make sure I caught who motioned in second.
So Deb motioned and Josie motioned and Janelle seconded.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to our second agenda item. Sorry, I have a computer issue. Give me 1 second. Okay, everything's okay. Okay, the second issue is D2. So we have a issue determination on an appeal of the staff's denial of 3 heritage tree removal permits at 2458 and 2460 Shannon Oaks Drive. So as was described during the introduction, this item begins with a staff report from Joanna Chen and Christian Bonner. And following that staff report, we will hear from the appellant, followed by the applicant, followed by public comment. So I'd like to invite the staff members to join us in the staff presentation.
Is everybody able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you for that introduction. Good evening, Chair Price and EQC commissioners. I'm here to present a heritage tree appeal on 2458 and 2460 Sharon Oaks Drive. For tonight's hearing, you will hear from city staff. With me, I have Christian Bonner, the city arborist, myself, Joanna Chen, the sustainability specialist. You'll also hear from the appellant, Mark Danielson, who is the property owner of 2460 Sharon Oaks Drive. You'll also hear from the permit applicant, Rebecca Grant, who is the president of the Sharon Oaks HOA. To give you some context as to why EQC is hearing this appeal, the heritage tree removal permit application and staff decision was made before July 1st, which was the effective date of the current ordinance. So therefore, this appeal falls underneath the previous heritage tree ordinance. So as a friendly reminder of the previous heritage tree ordinance, the permit applicant or any community member may appeal staff's decision to the Environmental Quality Commission. And EQC's decision must be based on the previous decision-making criteria. Okay, so I'll start us off. The city received a heritage tree removal application from the Sharon Oaks Homeowners Association on June 15th. The request was to remove 3 coast redwoods. 2 of them are 90 feet tall, and 1 of them is 70 feet tall. Just to give you a comparison of how tall they are, imagine 2 telephone poles stacked on each other. So the main removal reason is that the tree roots are damaging and may further damage the townhouse structures, which are located on 2458 and 2460 Sharon Oaks Drive. Included with the permit applications were 2 professional reports. One of them is the arborist report and a foundation inspection report. So the project arborist report stated that the trees are in fair condition. And what that meant is that the trees show initial or temporary disease, pest, or lack of vitality. Routine maintenance such as weight reduction can improve the tree's appearances and the health. And the project arborist's recommendation is to remove based on the tree roots damage to the building structures. The second professional report is from Mr. Drew. He wrote a foundation inspection report. He notes that the foundation conditions are normally accepted, tolerant for good foundation performance. He identifies 2 areas of the interior slab distress at 2460 Sharon Oaks Drive. One area may be caused by several factors, such as construction tolerance, moisture from tree growth. There's another area located at the patio, which is most likely caused by root growth. He also noted that there is similar distress at 2458 Sharon Oaks Drive. The property owners did repair the patio by pruning the roots and waterproofing the slab in 2017, and there hasn't been any subsequent damage since then. And so in his report, he recommended removing 2 redwoods to eliminate potential future damages to the foundations, but he didn't specify a time frame of when those damages may occur. So now I'll turn it over to the city arborist for his assessment.
Okay, please let me know if you can see my screen, starting from the slide titled City Arborist Assessment.
We can see it. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much to the commission, first off, and good evening. So I conducted a level 2 basic inspection and site assessment of the 3 subject trees as well as the site. I'm sorry, can I getting ahead of myself here? I visited the site actually on 3 separate occasions, once to make my initial inspection, the second time upon the invitation of the appellant to view the reported damage to their property, which I did, and they were kind enough to let me into their home on both properties. And then a third time after the appeal was made to take additional measurements, specifically the measurement from the tree to the structures. So my recommendation is to deny the permit application based on the following criteria: that the trees are in fair to good health, they all have low risk ratings, there's insufficient evidence showing that the tree removal would prevent any further damage to the structures, and that any existing damage is caused solely by the trees. And lastly, that there does appear to be reasonable and feasible alternatives for removal that are available. So just in summary, the following criteria based on the previous version of the ordinance, as Joanna described: criteria 1, condition of the trees, respect to disease, danger of falling, proximity to existing or proposed structures and interference with utility services, long-term value of the species, and then the availability of reasonable and feasible alternatives. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this because it's not really the purpose for the removal that was stated by the applicant. It is relevant to some degree because it influences to what degree of root loss the trees can tolerate based on their health. So 2 of the 3 trees I evaluated as being in good condition, and one of them as being in fair condition. In my report, there's more kind of expansive definitions of what exactly that is. And if you have questions about that, please let me know. Again, the risk rating for all of these trees was evaluated as being low. So this image depicts a satellite image of the properties. 2458 is the townhome on the right-hand side of the screen that is immediately in front of tree numbers 2 and 3, and is 15 feet away from those trees. The slab foundation is 15 feet away. And then 2460 is located immediately in front of tree number 1. And tree number 1 and number 2 are the larger of the 2 specimens, and then tree number 3 is the smaller. So in evaluating this criteria, the proximity to the structures, it is worth pointing out that in one of the arborist reports that was submitted by the applicant, they identify as the distance of all of the trees as being 15 feet from the subject properties. And I did return, as I mentioned previously, to actually physically measure all of the distance of the trees to the foundation, because tree number 1 is visibly a greater distance further away from 2460 than is tree number 2 and number 3 from 2458. And so I went back to measure that, and indeed tree number 1 is located 18 feet away from 2460, the foundation there. So it's relevant because it definitely impacts the amount of work that can be done in proximity to the tree to address any potential damage or repair or modifications that the property owner may want to do to the structure. And I'll expand upon that later when we talk about alternatives. There was submitted with the application 2 separate structural engineer reports or engineers reports to document the inspection of the foundation of both structures, which was very helpful in my analysis. And the two separate reports were just for each property, one at 2458 and the other for 2460. And in summary, and I can let the applicant and the appellant expand on this. In summary, there was no significant deviation in terms of the level of the foundation. It was found to be within normal tolerances for foundation performance, given the age of the structure. So it was not that the foundation is significantly shifting in terms of the level of the structure, but what was found was that for specifically for 2460, that there was some moisture intrusion that was happening into the slab foundation. And as I believe Mrs. Chen kind of summarized earlier, that there was several reasons given that were likely causes of the moisture intrusion. One being just the nature of the soil itself, the inherent shrink swell properties of the soil. As many of you know, in Menlo Park, we tend to have more clay soils, which are more prone to shrink swell. It was not identified as being extreme, but rather moderate shrink swell, and identified as one of the potential issues for moisture intrusion. The second one was for just normal construction tolerances, deviation in terms of what is acceptable, foundation construction. So there may be some faults in the initial construction. And then lastly, the potential for root intrusion under the slab foundation. And so the last is obviously, the subject of the staff report and our kind of conversation here today. As I indicated earlier, the property owners at 2460 did allow me to go into their property and view damage to the hardwood floors, which was visible and apparent and significant. And they submitted some images depicting that as well with their submittals. For 2458, they were also kind enough to let me into their property. They had a similar circumstance occur a few years back, which the repair work was completed for in 2017. And essentially, as my understanding in summary was, they excavated the area in the patio immediately behind the trees, essentially in between the foundation for the structures and the trees. There's a paver patio behind both properties, which was experiencing uplift of the individual pavers. And they excavated that entire patio. They excavated some of the roots in that area in order to redo the patio. They excavated adjacent to the foundation slab in order to waterproof the foundation and cut roots that were intruding, and they did find roots in that area. And then repair the interior. And since that time in 2017, they confirmed that there was no further damage and that none had been reported. And so essentially 2460, what they reported and what I observed was similar to what was reported at 2458 that happened a few years back. And there was indeed uplift of the patio pavers in the back, which appeared to be directly related to root growth between the redwoods and the foundation. And there was damage to the hardwood floors in the interior of the property as well. So that's a summary essentially of the trees in relation to the structures and the existing conditions of the structures and how it relates to the trees. And again, I'll talk more about the interaction of the tree roots and the structures when we talk about alternatives. So all three trees, I'm sure most of the members of the commission or all of you are familiar with Coast Redwood. We've seen it on several different projects where we've received appeals. What we use to evaluate the long-term value, specifically the value of the trees, is a metric that's identified in the appraisal methodology that we use, that's identified in the Heritage Tree Ordinance, both previous and current. and it's just a desirability level that's identified by an industry publication, and the Coast Redwood is essentially given the highest rating, 90% rating, and then there's a 10% variance that's to the subjectivity of the appraiser. The subject trees are estimated to be between 50 and 60 years old. That's a rough estimate based on their size and the age of the structures. And then the long-term value of the redwood trees, as most of us know, they can live for a very long time in cultivation, not uncommon to find 150 years, and then specimens living in their natural environment over 2,000 years. So moving on to the alternatives that I evaluated. Essentially, the repair work that is likely going to be required to repair the existing damage that exists at 2460 is likely similar to that required at 2458, and that was identified and even recommended in the engineer's report to essentially do the same application of the repair to 2460 that was done next door. And they had a very similar, if not identical, problem in terms of moisture intruding into the slab foundation. So when doing this repair work, there's a lot of options or alternatives to minimize future root intrusion, which was identified as being possible to occur or likely to occur at some undetermined point in the future. And there's a whole list of them there, and I'm happy to expand upon any of them. I'll just quickly mention that several of these were identified in the engineer's report as kind of standard practice for repairing and reinforcing foundations. I will also point out that the distance from the trees for tree number 1 to 2460, which 2460 is immediately in front of tree number 1, and the distance from tree number 2 and number 3, those are different. I'm just going to back up here a little bit so we're all looking at the same image. So the repair work was done for the property on the right in front of tree number 2 and number 3. And that repair work was done at a closer distance to the trees. And the trees did not require removal at that time. And to date, that repair work was done effectively. The repair work done or needed at 2460 is required to be done at a greater distance away from tree number 1 than was required for tree number 2 and number 3. And that's why I needed to go back and verify that distance. It appeared to be a greater distance away, and I just needed to go and measure that. And it's 3 feet further. And it's important because it provides a significantly greater distance in which any repair work would be outside what we refer to as the critical root zone. And that essentially is just the area in which it's advisable to avoid any significant root severance in that area in order to minimize affecting the structural stability of the trees. Now, redwood trees are very tolerant from a health perspective of significant root loss as long as they receive supplemental irrigation. So it's not so much a concern about the potential damage for the health of the tree in terms of root excavation, but any potential impact that the excavation required for the repair work may have on the structure of the tree. And so the 18 feet is well outside of that critical root zone. From the edge of the foundation, there's approximately 4.5 feet away from the foundation that, in essence, the property owner or the contractor doing the work could just sever all the roots and cut straight down as far as they wanted. I don't think that the repair work requires excavating down beyond 2 feet. There's a lot of different options and approaches that can be taken in order to doing the foundation repair. But in terms of the impact on the trees, which I evaluated, it was clear to me that there was ample space to do that repair work and not compromise either the structural integrity of the tree number one specifically, nor the health of the tree. So going back to the slide for the alternatives, if the commission was to uphold the decision to deny the permit and the property owner decided to proceed with foundation repair work that required excavation within 10 times the diameter of the tree, which is the current protection metric that's identified in the current and previous version of the Heritage Tree Ordinance, then that property owner would be required to obtain building permits that specify tree protection measures in relation to the excavation work that was being performed. So essentially, they'd be required to get a project arborist to supervise the work, to work hopefully in close concert with the engineer and or contractor performing the work so that any damage to the tree is minimized. Now, there is additional work that's required outside that 4.5 feet, that critical root zone, that's under the patio. But that work would likely be a lot more superficial because it doesn't potentially require excavating down, up to 2 feet or whatever the depth of the foundation is. It would be more superficial in terms of root pruning, or what we call root shaving in the industry, just to prune down the surface of the roots, to reinstall base material and pavers. And then there's a lot of different alternatives for those type of material and construction methods in order to minimize potential conflict in the future. So in summary, it's staff's recommendation for the Environmental Quality Commission to uphold the staff's decision to deny the permit application to remove the 3 coast redwoods at 2458 and 2460 Sharon Oaks Drive. And that concludes the staff report.
Thank you, Christian. I think at this time we would move on to the presentation by the appellant.
Can I ask a clarifying question of Christian?
Yeah.
Was there any report on the property that had the remediation for the foundation if the moisture issue was fully addressed?
Yes, so the engineer's report did make recommendations for the repair work. And again, they can expand upon that. I believe they're present here this evening and we'll have the opportunity to present. I'm not an engineer, but in summary, it was essentially what I described, which was done at 2458, which was to excavate the roots, excavate the area adjacent to the slab, identify any roots in that area, then cut them, and then install a moisture barrier and potentially some drainage to limit irrigation, supplemental irrigation in that area to minimize additional root growth and to discourage positive growing environment for root development. And there were some specific diagrams that are provided at the end of both engineers' report that kind of depict some of the recommended remediation efforts. And then I would just also add to that a general statement was made in the engineer's report, just essentially to excavate and cut the roots under the patio. And as I attempted to describe previously, they can do that, but that needs to be done within the context of what I described with the project arborist identifying tree protection measures. So they can't just go in there and cut everything. It'd be unadvisable to do that because it could impact the structure of the trees. It just needs to be done on the supervision of a project arborist in which select root pruning and root shaving is done. And my understanding from the description of the property owner next door at 2458, that's exactly what they did.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So if there are no further clarifying questions of staff, I would like to invite the appellant. I do see 2 names under Mark Danielson under the attendees. So if you could raise your hand so I could identify which mic to turn on. Thank you. And I'm going to promote you to panelists so that the Environmental Quality Commission can see you. So you are more than welcome to turn on your webcam and also your mic. And if there's anything you need to share, you can share that as well. And with that, you're promoted to panelist and we should be able to hear you.
I think, Mark, it looks like you're still muted, which if you're speaking may be why we're not responding. There you go.
Can you hear me?
Now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I think I provided a PowerPoint presentation that hopefully the city staff can show.
Give us a second, Mr. Danielson. And
Appreciate it.
I'll get staff to pull up the presentation.
I just turned on my camera too, so.
Perfect. We can see you now, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. Before the presentation comes up, I just wanted to preface things by mentioning that the engineer's report that Mr. Bonner was referring to, I think has been misinterpreted a little bit, but I can get to that when we get the presentation started. Oh, I think we're getting it here. Great. Okay, thank you so much. So here, I just provided 3 pictures. There's more in the appeal that was filed. So all the way to the left is a picture, and the far left is the tree that is right outside our unit, which is 2460. That's our fence right behind the tree. And to the right of the tree is, you can see the stairway is pretty much at a 45-degree angle because of the tree roots. And those same roots are the ones that are invading our house. So all the way to the right is a picture showing how the roots from the tree are coming in from the tree towards our house. This is a picture of our patio when we were having it repaired a couple years ago. And this shows how the roots are just right underneath the surface and causing damage to our patio, the stairways, other structures, and also growing underneath our foundation. And the middle picture is just one picture. There are many more in our appeal, just showing the damage to our hardwood floors that are caused by the roots that are underneath our foundation. I guess we can go to the next slide, please. So there's several reasons why we take the position that the tree should be replaced and not kept. And it's worth pointing out again that we are not advocating to just tear down the trees and replacing them with nothing. We're just wanting these particular trees to be removed and to be replaced with different trees that don't have the same adverse effects on our property. So Mr. Bonner had mentioned the approximate age of the trees. Actually, this the Sharon Oaks subdivision was built in the mid-70s, early mid-70s. And these trees were planted after the buildings were built. So it's not like the developers came in and built around pre-existing redwood trees. They planted these trees after all the units were built. And just quite simply, they were the wrong trees that were planted in the wrong place. And no one, from what I understand, no one would do that now. But 45 years ago, it wasn't considered a problem. So these trees were planted about 15 feet from the foundations of our units. Thank you, Mr. Bonner, for explaining that one is 15 feet away, one is 18 feet away. It doesn't really make any difference because they have very aggressive root structures that go well beyond 15 feet or 18 feet or 20 feet or 25. It doesn't really matter. The point is that they're growing underneath our house. So we bought 2460 about 12 years ago, and there were no noticeable problems at that time. And they only started becoming apparent just a few years ago. We first noticed our pavers in our patio standing on edge and buckling and everything, and it was very apparent at that time that the tree roots were causing that. So we shaved the roots a little bit on our house, replaced the pavers, and that's what the pictures that on the earlier slide showed. So that was about 2 years ago. About a few months after those were replaced, we started noticing our floors buckling inside the house. And already the pavers outside our house are buckling, which I'm sure Mr. Bonner can attest to. So after we found out realized that the problems with the roots were more severe than we even earlier considered, we talked with our neighbors in 2458, and they explained that they had the same problems and talked about all the thousands of works, different measures that they did to repair the damage. They explained that to us. And as to reiterate, so these trees are relatively young and will continue to grow, as Mr. Bonner explained, perhaps as long as 2,000 years. So they will continue to cause damage because of the roots growing and continuing to grow, and probably growing even more because these trees are relatively young now. And as we'll explain more, just over the next 50 years, we estimate that these trees will cause $100,000 in damage just to the unit owners, due to the measures that we will need to take to make sure that they do not significantly damage our foundation. Next slide, please. So the most important point we'd like to make is we need to replace the trees to stop the tens of thousands of dollars of out-of-pocket damage that are being caused by the roots. So as has been explained, the neighbors, the 2458 owners, already have spent $30,000 to fix their patio and the downstairs floors. And the damage to our unit is even more extensive, and we currently estimate would be at least $50,000 just to get the damage that has already occurred to be repaired. So just it's itemized here, thousands of dollars for all the inspection report, expert inspections and reports that we've had to get done because for some reason, people just refuse to believe that these roots are causing the damage to our house. And we've also are going to need to repair the damage to our hardwood floors. And just to give an idea, I mean, Mr. Bonner saw the damage to our floors that was present just a couple months ago. Well, this damage is spreading. It's already approximately with about 20 feet from the patio into the inside of our house. So it's extensive and very noticeable. In addition to the floors themselves, we're going to have to fix the foundation and install a moisture barrier that the structural engineer has recommended. It's going to cost about $25,000 to repair our patio with the pavers digging down to a certain level, replacing it with rock. And in addition to the damage to our floors, the moisture that is caused by the intrusion through the foundation is causing mold to spread between the floor and the foundation and collect there. And not only has that mold grown underneath the floor, it's also started to embed itself in the dry walls. And so we have to run professional grade HEPA filters in our house 24 hours every day just to clear the air. And the point of all this itemization of damage is that this is totally out of pocket to us. And this isn't a tree, we don't even own this tree. So we are paying all this out-of-pocket money to repair damage that's being done by a tree that we don't even own. And we've tried to file insurance claims and they've denied it. So we're totally out of pocket. And of course, City of Menlo Park is not in a rush to reimburse us either. So to the next slide, this just shows the copy of our insurance denial letter, and going down to the bottom to that bullet, they came in, did an inspection, took some moisture readings, looked at all the damage to the patio, and just readily understood that the damage to our house, inside of our house, was caused by the trees. And so that's where the bullet item says the roots from the redwood trees are causing damage to our foundation and interior of our condominium over an extended period of time. But it's not covered by our insurance because it's as a result of earth movement. Next slide. So just getting back to Mr. Bonner's earlier interpretation of the structural engineer's report, the sentence where he's saying that the engineer is saying that there's good foundation performance is only referring to the fact that the foundation is level. There's no substantial bumps or buckling of the foundation itself. But the engineer said still the tree roots are causing damage to our foundation. And the way it works is as it's set forth here. So the foundations themselves don't buckle like the pavers do or the stairway outside. The foundation remains fairly level. But what happens is the roots are going underneath our foundation and they're moving the soil around beneath our foundation. Now this soil movement compromises the soil and compromises the support for the foundation. Now this compromised support causes cracks to form in the foundation, very tiny cracks, but enough to allow moisture to intrude through them. And then this moisture bubbles through these cracks and into the interior of our condominium. And that's what causes the hardwood floors to buckle. And the insurance inspector did moisture readings and conclusively determined that that's what was causing the hardwood floors to buckle. And in addition to that, it's causing mold to grow. And as long as the roots can grow, the further damage will result. So the next slide, please. So referring now to the mold problem, this is causing substantial health hazards and mitigates towards replacing the trees. So the mold is growing under our hardwood floors and embedding in our drywall. So we had a mold expert come out and took readings, and this just shows part of the report that shows the mold readings. Now each of those numbers in the grade column should all be less than 100. So you see some of those are 1900. That's 19 times what the maximum level should be. So there's substantial mold in our house, which is very unhealthy. And we have residents with some pre-existing health conditions, and so this is a very dangerous problem for us. Next slide, please. And not only is this causing present damage that we'll need to be out of pocket for, it's causing future damage to our market value of our home in the future, both now with respect to being able to sell it or rent it. We can't rent it or sell it until we fix the floors and address the tree roots. And in addition to that, because of the problems with the trees, the value of our house will be diminished if the trees are not replaced. We'll have to disclose all the problems that we have with the roots and the mold, and if we have to dig a barrier, it'll cause us to lose the full use and enjoyment of our patio. Go to the next slide, please. So, Mr. Bonner, one of the things that he mentioned is to build a moisture barrier trench. Well, this is, I mean, that's easy to say, but we have gotten an expert to estimate that it would cost about $15,000 to do that. So that's more money of our pocket. The trench would not, it's not possible to install it right next to our foundation. We'd have to install it about 24 inches or 36 inches away from our foundation, because we have
Mr. Danielson, I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt, but you are at your 15-minute presentation time limit.
Okay, can I just get 5 minutes? I think the city staff went just a little bit over too.
Sorry, I have a dog that's crying at my house. I just want to check with city staff, because the time limits are specifically applying to presentations not made by staff. So I just want to double check on the time limit policy from the staff's perspective.
Hi, that is correct. So the appellant and the permit applicant each get 15 minutes.
Can I just wrap up? I would just like to say that this proposed trench, you know, we need to install it if the trees aren't removed. It's going to cost about $15,000 to do that, and we're going to have to do it every 5 to 7 years, because the trench won't, the moisture barrier won't last forever. We'll have to keep repairing it and replacing it. And so that's going to happen. That's going to need to happen for as long as the trees are out there. And just the final slide, if I may. So again, we just are asking that some replacement trees be installed that will not cause this substantial cost to us, and still provide benefits that the trees will provide.
Thank you, Mr. Danielson. Did any commissioners have clarifying questions for Mr. Danielson regarding his presentation? If we don't have clarifying questions at this time, we can move on to the presentation by the original applicant, I believe is Rebecca.
So Miss Rebecca Grant has informed me that William Hoffman will be presenting on behalf of the permit applicant. And so I am going to unmute the microphone and promote Mr. Hoffman to panelist, and staff will share his presentation and just give the cue to staff when to change the slides. Just give me a minute here.
Thank you, Ms. Lucky.
Okay, Mr. Hoffman, your mic and camera should be able to be turned on now. Let me just double check here.
I'm unmuted my camera. Let's see. Let me try. Okay, I think we're in.
Perfect. We can hear and see you.
Good, thank you. Well, thank you to the staff and members of the commission for giving us this opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Bill Hoffman. I'm a member of the board of directors and vice president of the Sharon Oaks Association, the Homeowners Association at Sharon Oaks. And I'm appearing on behalf of the board to support this appeal to Danielson's and to request that the commission allow removal permits to be granted for the 3 redwood trees behind 2458 and 2460. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to speak briefly about the Sharon Oaks Association in general. I'm going to go very quickly through the homeowner damage because I think Mr. Danielson gave a quite extensive explanation, at least with respect to his home. And then I'll talk specifically about damage to the HOA's common areas. So next slide, please. So Sharon Oaks is a planned unit development spanning 13 acres. We have 90 individually owned lots and homes. And then we have jointly owned common areas. The association's management responsibilities fall on particularly the board, and our responsibilities include maintenance and repair of all common areas and facilities, and these include the landscaping and trees around each home, as well as all of the other commonly owned assets such as the roads, swimming pools, clubhouse, and other infrastructure. The homeowners are, of course, responsible for maintaining their own homes, as well as their lots and adjoining patios. The next 2 slides show the location of Sharon Oaks and the subject trees. So you can see the red dot, that is Sharon Oaks. We are adjacent to Sand Hill Road. And if you know the neighborhood, we're right across the street from the Sharon Heights Shopping Center on Sharon Park Drive. Next slide. So this is an overhead view. This is similar to Mr. Bonner's photo, but from a different perspective. We see the red dots there, 2460 and 2458, and then the 3 trees circled in white. And as Mark Danielson stated, we believe these trees were not pre-existing the site, but instead were planted during the property's development, but apparently too close to the adjacent homes in view of their size at maturity and their extensive root systems. So this then brings us to the patio damaged at 2458 and 2460. Next page, please. So as Mr. Bonner mentioned, the homeowner at 2458 had patio damage and renovated the patio, remediated the tree root intrusion through excavation and root cutting, thicker concrete, regrading, and metal flashing. And although the homeowner hasn't noticed any root intrusion since, she has expressed concerns that the problem will reappear. Next page. In 2018, the association was notified of an irrigation issue in the patio at 2460. It was suspected that the roots of the association-owned trees were causing irrigation pipes to leak. These same roots were lifting the homeowner's patio pavers, and our arborist, Urban Tree Management, visited the site and suggested these 3 remediation measures: excavation, root cutting of the smaller roots, and root shaving of the larger roots, and the addition of a sponge-like material on top of the shaved roots to help minimize future patio damage. Next slide, please. That work was completed in 2018, but now just 2 years later, the association was notified that the patio damage at 2460 has returned. Again, our arborist investigated and noted evidence of tree root encroachment under the patio, but has subsequently recommended removal of the trees and their replacement with red oak or valley oak trees, which hopefully would be more suitable for the location. Next slide. This is a shot from the other side of the trees that shows the trunks highlighted for clarity behind these 2 homes. The wall behind the trees is the wall of the patios, and 2458 would be on the left-hand side of this photo and 2450 on the right. But in addition to the patios and the homes, we also have several common area assets near these trees that are currently showing signs of root damage, including irrigation lines, walkways, stairs, and parking areas. The next 3 slides show the damage to these common areas. So this first slide shows photos of the guest parking area and common walkways adjacent to the trees. These assets have been subject to ongoing damage from the tree's roots over the years and have required regular repair. And these are recent photos that show, again, that the trees are further uplifting these aspects of infrastructure. Next slide, please. Next slide. There we go. So in addition to this, earlier this year, our landscapers discovered that the irrigation main line and laterals running adjacent to these trees and taking care of all the planting areas in the vicinity, the roots had crushed the main line and significantly squeezed the lateral lines, causing them to deliver little or no water. The irrigation lines had to be completely rerouted, and these issues are likely to occur again in the future as the roots continue to grow. Next page. Next page, please. These pictures show the common area stairs near 2460. Mr. Danielson had a picture similar to the one on the left. These have been pushed askew by the roots from one of the subject trees. We're still awaiting a proposal to design and build a new solution to the stairway, but this is the second time we've had to rebuild these stairways in 10 years due to root damage. The association's repair costs this year for the irrigation and stair damage from the tree roots alone will be approximately $11,000. We anticipate needing to spend several $1,000s for ongoing repairs next year as well, and we believe these costs will continue on a regular and potentially escalating basis as the trees and the roots continue to grow. All of these costs, of course, are borne by the association's members through their monthly homeowners assessments. Next page. So in summary, there's been a history of extensive remediation actions that the association has taken, and despite this, the tree roots continue to cause damage. Future damage is anticipated, and costly repairs will be an ongoing obligation of the association. So in order to prevent further damage, the board wishes to evaluate whether removing these trees and replacing them with trees more suitable to the location would be a better alternative and in the best interest of the association as a whole, rather than continuing to incur ongoing periodic remediation and repair costs over the remaining life of these trees, which could be many years. For this reason, the association submitted the 3 heritage tree removal permit applications in order to give this board the option to consider. Next slide. So finally, for all of these reasons, the board of directors of Sharon Oaks Association joins the Danielsons in respectively requesting that the committee overturn the staff's denial and allow us to be granted the permits for removal of these 3 trees. Thank you. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Bill. I have a clarifying question, but are there any other, oh, there's a note, sorry, because there is 5 minutes remaining, you may, if Mark is still on the phone, he may be able to use the, sorry, there's 2 minutes left. He may be able to use the 2 minutes. Mark, if you'd like to use the 2 minutes, you can, if Bill is comfortable with that.
I'll cede my time.
Hi. Let me just promote. Sorry, are you, so I can set the timer. Is it 2
Yeah.
minutes? Okay.
It's 2 minutes, that's what it says.
I think I have promoted Mr. Danielson. But I don't see a mic available. Maybe, and again, I do see 2 Mr. Danielsons as attendees, so I just want to make sure you may be calling in or
Oh,
using 2
there's a-
devices.
Oh,
Can
there
you-
was a mic for
Can
a
you hear me
second.
now?
Yes,
Yes.
now we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. So I would just quickly like to address another point that was made. So the owner of 2458 did make some repairs just 3 years ago, and a point was made that it seems to have fixed things for now. Again, that's just 3 years, and the engineer that inspected 2458 said that the problems that they had that caused them to make the repairs earlier would likely recur if the trees were not removed. And again, we just like to underscore that this is a substantial expense to us. Just not only what we're going to be suffering out of pocket just to get the property back in a marketable condition from the damage that has already been done, but just all the mitigation efforts that will need to be done both now and for decades to come, which will reduce the value of our home.
Thank you, Mark. If I can, I had one clarifying question for Bill, the representative from the Homeowners Association. And I don't know if anybody else had any clarifying questions.
I've just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Hi, yes, I can. Thank
Okay,
you.
good.
So my clarifying question was when you were showing the images of the association, it looked, at least from the image that you showed, that there are a number of other redwood trees on the property. Has damage been reported from any of the other trees, which from the picture appear to be sort of centrally located as well around common areas and other units?
No, I'm not aware of any similar damage reported with respect to any of the other trees.
Thank you. But there are the image, is that correct to say that there are other redwood trees on the property?
There are other redwood trees, yes, but I'm not aware of any damage being reported as a result.
Thank you. And it looks like Commissioner Martin may have a question.
Yeah, I have a clarifying question too. So regarding the water intrusion, if I understood from the engineering report, there are other, I noted, contributing factors such as we all know our soil is made of clay and different things that kind of can contribute to these types of issues. Have you had other units in your 13-acre property have water intrusion issues that you're aware of that are causing floor damage and mold and such, or is it just these 2 units?
I personally am not aware of any other units. There are other units that have had water issues outside, but primarily from drainage systems and not specifically from tree roots. In other words, water pooling, collecting from downspouts and running back up against foundations or running under patios, but nothing that I'm aware of specifically resulting from tree roots.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other clarifying questions for any of the presenters at this time? Okay.
Sorry, one
that's-
more.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, no problem.
I was wondering from Mr. Danielson or Mr. Hoffman, I'm not sure. The residents of the other unit that's not present, 2458, I asked this of Christian, and he's the tree expert, so I don't think he was the right person to ask. But when 2458 repaired their foundation and waterproofed it, did that stop the floor buckling? And did they have mold issues? And if they did that get resolved?
Mark may have had more discussions than I have. I'm not aware of a specific mold issue at 2458. But my understanding is that the work that they did, at least for the time being, resolved their issues, which did include some floor buckling. I'm not aware of mold, but again, that was only 3 years ago. And the concern is as the trees continue to grow, the root systems continue to expand, that these problems can reoccur.
Okay, thank you. Does Mr. Danielson have any information on that other unit and whether the mold issue, did they have mold and was it resolved?
As far as I know, they did not have mold, but they did have the hardwood floor damage, and they had to actually replace their hardwood floors completely, in addition to their patio.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any additional clarifying questions at this time? Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Cabot.
Yes, I just had a question for the applicant and appellant. It's sounding like all of the problems being identified in the unit are the result of moisture. Is that right?
Well, the patio damage is directly because of the roots. The roots are causing the pavers to buckle. For the interior, what is happening, as the experts explained, is that the roots are causing the soil to shift underneath the foundation, which are causing cracks to form in the foundation, which is then causing moisture to intrude. So that's what, yes, in the interior, the moisture is what is causing the problems.
All right, thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, I noticed that when you were talking about the various, like the sidewalk cracks and the stairwell issue, which you referred to as damaged assets. So I'm sure that I realize that's a problem. I'm just wondering whether your greater community kind of also sees those trees as an asset and kind of feels like, although they are, causing problems, that's sort of a natural thing with any big tree, right? Not just I want to make sure we just kind of point out it's not just a redwood. I mean, if you're going to have that, right? So has there been any expression from the community that because this is what we see a lot, right? Is like the trees, people have different views of the trees. I'm just wondering whether you've had expression from the homeowners in there that they're concerned about loss of trees because, as Ryan pointed out, Commissioner Ryan pointed out, I also noticed there were several other large redwood trees on that property. And I'm just kind of wondering whether whether those trees would be asked to get taken down in the future, because all the problems you're articulating seem to be something that would be common for all the trees.
Well, this is Bill Hoffman. We have not canvassed all of the other owners in the association with respect to their views on these particular trees. Our purpose in submitting the permit application was to give the board the opportunity to consider whether tree removal was even an option. Because if we knew that that was not going to be an option, then of course we're going to have to then further investigate other remedial steps that might be more extensive than what we might do immediately, for example, if tree removal were an option. So we're just trying to provide the board with the full scope of the alternatives that they can weigh in taking into account both the costs of tree removal, were that an option to be chosen, or the ongoing remediation, were that to be the option chosen, and to consider all of this in light of the benefits of trees to the property values in the association as a whole, as well as specific trees that may be causing problems. We have to deal with specific problems as they arise. As I said, I'm not aware of any other trees causing similar problems at present. That's not to say that things couldn't occur in the future. But currently, these are the only 3 trees that are causing significant damage to both community assets and homeowners' assets.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Cabot.
I did get a chance, building on Commissioner Martin's question, I did get a chance to visit the property yesterday and take a look at the trees. I found them by going around to the back, following the road around, the common road around to the back towards the pool. But I didn't notice the trees being tagged as being subject to this type of discussion. And so I was curious about whether the rest of the residents, you mentioned 90 some properties, whether they were informed of this exploration.
I don't believe so. Again, the board has not voted to remove the trees. The purpose of determining whether or not we could even obtain a permit was to give the board the ability to weigh various alternatives. But no decision is made, and no, the trees weren't tagged. Personally, I wasn't aware that that was necessary. At least we weren't advised by the city as part of the application process that we needed to tag the trees.
If I may add something, so the topic of the trees has been on the HOA meeting agenda for several months. So I would guess that the majority of people in the HOA are aware of the problems that the trees are creating and aware that we are pursuing the possibility of removing the trees. And as far as I know, nobody has raised any objection whatsoever about having the trees removed.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Martin.
Yeah, one point I wanted to raise, which I really picked up on, and I really sympathize with it. So I just want you to know, Mark, that you made a comment that you have a tree on your that's impacting your house that you don't even own. Like it's been put there by the association or whatever, it was built there, right? So, and that I understand that is frustrating, but I do want you to be aware that even me as a homeowner, if I have a heritage tree on my own property, I don't technically own that tree. It's it's considered, that's why we're a tree city and we have a heritage tree process. So if that seems frustrating, I just wanted you to know you're not alone, because every homeowner in Menlo Park, whether it's on a common property or not, that applies. So I don't know if that's comforting. I just wanted to make sure you understood that.
Thank you. I think the point was that ordinarily with the tree being on our own property and owned by us, we would also have the benefit of the actual value of the tree, but we do not.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this time that are clarifying questions for the presenters? The next step in the process, just so everybody knows, would be to hear public comment. So it does not mean that you can't ask questions in the future. It just means that the next step we would take would be to move to public comment.
Thank you, Chair Price. For members of the public who are in attendance and wish to provide public comment on this item, if you wish to speak, please engage the raised hand feature, which is near your name, and I will then have the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment for up to 3 minutes. And with that, I do have 2 hands raised at this time. The first being Mr. Peter Edmonds. I will now allow you to use your mic, so you should be able to turn it on. Thank you.
And just to remind everybody, for public comment, there is a 3-minute limit, and the city staff are keeping that time. So we will kind of interject at that 3-minute marker. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Edmonds, you might have to turn on your microphone.
Okay, it responded now.
Yes, we can hear you.
Good evening, commissioners. Pleased to have this opportunity to add to the letter that I directed to the staff yesterday. And I hope you have received it, wherein I supported the denial that staff have recommended. On further reading of the staff report today, I have the impression that failure to satisfy any one of the criteria that are invoked from the Heritage Tree Ordinance would be sufficient to justify rejection of this application. The fact that there are 3 criteria, none of which are satisfied, according to the staff report, seems to me to provide overwhelming evidence that the application should be rejected. Moving on, I will comment on the presentations this evening. And the first thing that strikes me is that removing the 3 trees will not cure the costly damages that the applicants have described. In order to restore the property to a marketable asset, they will have to do this repair work. And it's puzzling to me that they purchased the property 10 or 12 years ago when the trees were apparently 33 or 35 years old. I don't think that they could have been easily overlooked at that time. And then they apparently didn't purchase enough or the appropriate insurance to have this foreseeable damage covered. So much as one may wish to sympathize with any owners in this position, it strikes me that they have some responsibility, if not a considerable amount. Since I've got only a few seconds left, I'll move on to the Homeowners Association. And I visited the property yesterday also, and it's very clear from the street that these trees are distressed. And I wonder if the staff are going to take action to hold the homeowners association responsible for this distressed condition, when knowing that they are heritage trees, they are required to be maintained in a healthy condition.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds. We appreciate your public comment. Ms. Lucky, you had mentioned that there were 2 raised hands. Are we ready for our second public comment?
Yes, the second public comment is from, excuse me for my informality, but I don't have a last name, Michael. You may open your mic.
This is Michael Young. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Great. I'm a certified arborist, and I've been the arborist for Sharon Oaks Homeowners Association for, I'm losing track, it might be 20 years now. And I've been taking care of all the trees there, and then most recently helping them with the consulting projects. I think I mentioned I'm the owner of Urban Tree Management. So I'm here to sort of shed a macro light on the trees on site and redwoods in general. And what I'd have to say is in the last 5 to 10 years, we've been really having more problems with the redwoods on site, because redwood trees have especially aggressive root systems. And so the dialogue around big trees and disruption to structures, I just want to make it clear that redwoods are among the most destructive root systems to structures as far as tree species go. So we're not going to have this problem with a live oak or a valley oak, but we will have it with a redwood tree. And just, I think this year or last, we've already been addressing some patio disruptions and sidewalk disruptions. The tree at 2460, I think maybe 3 years ago, the parking right by the tree was such a mess that nobody could use it. So that had to be mitigated. And I don't remember exactly what happened over there, but there may have been root loss to mitigate that parking area at that time too. So we're running up against, root damages on both sides of this tree now. And so the idea of taking away roots on, one side at one time, and then a couple of years later, taking away more roots, it's easy for people to lose track and forget that these trees are being root pruned on multiple sides. And so over time that can be disruptive to the tree stability. The other point that I'll make is that this is a 54-inch trunk diameter tree, and Christian is right that it's an 18-foot distance from the tree to 2460, and that is a 4 times trunk diameter distance, which 3 times trunk diameter is an absolute industry minimum, and any root impact or root loss within 10 times trunk diameter is the current Menlo Park ordinance. So the 2460 foundation is at 4 times trunk diameter, and basically all of the roots would have to be cut. So it's not insignificant. And I think my main take-home point for the commission here is that the redwood trees that are not near homes or structures, and there are some on site, aren't going to be a problem. And the redwood trees near homes and near structures are going to be a problem. So I think what you're going to see going forward is not only this issue, but it's going to keep happening at this site. The developers made a mistake by planting redwood trees this close to homes and structures. It's a common mistake. People want fast screening. little do they know that redwoods are quite damaging to structures. So, you know, in the macro picture is redwood trees shouldn't be this close to homes or structures. They should be in groves in more open areas. And replacement trees like red oaks or valley oaks or other trees that get quite large can be planted closer to structures without the potential for such invasive roots.
Thank you, Mr. Young. We appreciate it. We apologize for the malfunctioning timer. But we we were keeping it on our backup timer. So thank you very much for your public comment. We appreciate it. Ms. Lucky, are there any additional public comments at this time?
There are no additional public comments, Chair Price.
Thank you.
Apologies on the timer. We're getting the hang of virtual meetings.
Awesome. So given that that concludes the public comment as well as the presentations, we would now return the item to discussion by the EQC members. And obviously, if the EQC members have a question, we can direct that question to any of the individuals who presented. And that question should just be answered directly. So who would like to begin the discussion? Yes, Commissioner Martin, thank you.
I guess I'm not shy, so I'll start. Yeah, so I guess getting back to what Commissioner Cabot said, is it seems like what we have from a damage perspective is moisture, and the foundation is level, so it's not really like failing, it's a moisture issue. And then we have a patio paver issue. And so I'm not really sure that I feel like I have enough understanding based on what can cause. I understand that roots can cause moisture to come in, get that. But I just don't understand whether, and the age of this property, whether there's other contributing factors such as the soil, movement, et cetera, which I understand that. I get, you know, I think that. So I guess what I'm saying is, like, I'm a bit struggling to take down 3 beautiful redwood trees under this assumption that the roots are, you know, causing this water damage, and that I would sure hate to see that this comes down and then we still see water damage. So that's a concern I have, because I don't know that I've really seen concrete evidence that the roots are causing the water damage. So I don't know if there's more, you know, that can be said about that. I do get that there's going to be some sidewalk uprooting and some paver issues, like we see that, you know, we see lots of appeals and we see that, so we know that. But we have to weigh that against the value of the tree too. So, and the mitigating factors too, and we have to really weigh that seriously. So I want to really understand, are these tree roots 100% causing this moisture issue, or are there other contributing factors?
Thank you. Commissioner Cabot?
Yes, thank you very much. I thought I would build on that comment by Commissioner Martin. I'm feeling the same way too, that it does look like, from what we're seeing, the tree roots are able to push the pavers around that are closer, and they're not visibly able to be pushing the foundations and floors to the extent where there's visible cracking, crumbling, failure of foundations or floors, but there is other evidence of moisture problems. And then Mr. Hoffman, in answering one of my questions, did provide some interesting information, and that is that the board of the HOA is exploring removal. They have not decided they want to remove the trees. They wanted to explore removing them. So they're in an information gathering phase about how to deal with it. And it sounds like they do see that removing trees costs money, and mitigating the damage caused by trees costs money. And as we all know, trees are not free. You know, they're only free when the birds plant them for a little while. Then they start causing us to spend money to manage the issues with trees, but we also get the benefits from trees. We enjoy the value from trees. I get both. I have 3 large redwoods just 15 to 20 feet from my house right now. But what I'm sensing this idea that also hearing that the irrigation pipes were squashed and there have been irrigation water issues there. I'm wondering, also with a slab floor, I've heard of friends having cracks in their slab floor and having their hydronic heating water systems leak into the floor and wetting the floor, or having their regular tap water pipes leak into the floor and into the slab. Another friend has soil moisture nearby, and her slab wicks up that moisture and produces it at high humidity in her house. So I do see that slab floors are potentially a moisture problem in and of themselves, but it sounds like this one has risen recently in this location. So I'm looking at this and realizing the board is exploring options, not committing, and that they face a need to spend money one way or another on the trees. And I also, from visiting the site, I could see what to me as a layperson looked like a noticeable root cutting to lower the slope of the parking spaces that they've put up very close to the tree. They've had to cut the roots down, what I would guess would be 3 feet on that side. And I'm wondering if that's the type of thing they may want to landscape design around again, and either back the parking up or tilt it so that there's less cutting on that side. And maybe there are ways to accommodate these trees and their need to grow that involve other management of the site.
Thank you, Commissioner Cabot. Are there other points of discussion that people want to raise at this time? Go ahead, Commissioner Gaylor.
This is a really tough one for me. In the past, when there was like a loss of life was an issue, right? A sick tree and dropping limbs on people's bedrooms, that was very clear for me. This one is much tougher. I mean, it's clearly affecting property, and the moisture issue is affecting people's health. But to Deb's point, it's not entirely clear that the moisture issue is solely related to the tree roots. So I don't know, this is a really tough one for me. I mean, one consideration I have is, we've talked before, even though these trees are in healthy condition, we are facing climate change. We're going to have more drought. We're going to have higher temperatures. And if these are coast redwoods, my understanding is that they like kind of foggy, cool weather, and that they will have an increasingly hard time surviving in the climate that we're going to be in. So I don't know. I'm sort of undecided at this point. I can see both sides, but I'd be interested in Commissioner London and Price, your thoughts.
Thank you, Commissioner Gaylord. And I think Commissioner Martin also had a point she wanted to raise. You both kind of raised your hand at the exact same time. So I don't know which order we want to go in.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I just had more of a clarifying logistics question because it came about with the they're exploring this issue right now. So the question becomes, maybe for the staff, if, for instance, we did, how do I want to say this? Let's say we decided that we're going to choose to just decide that the trees need to come down tonight. then what I feel has failed in the process is that, or maybe this has to happen, is that there needs to be a sign posted on each of those trees so that the residents in that community get a chance to see that and they will respond. And I'm just bringing this up because I want you to be aware that you can expect, once people see signs up about redwoods in particular, you're probably going, it's just our experience that you're going to see sort of a half and half, right? You're probably going to get some challenges to that. So I feel like, you know, this is maybe an exploratory situation, but in the real, well, not, I shouldn't say the real, the next steps to me would be that signs need to be posted and the community needs to get an opportunity to respond to those trees coming down. So can the staff please, or someone clarify how that process would work for this?
So the current practice is that an appeal notice is sent to adjacent property owners for the appeal of the removal. There is no public noticing process for the denial. There is a public noticing process for approval, meaning notices on site. And under the current ordinance, the new revised ordinance, just FYI, that those public notices now only apply to development-related projects and conflict with utilities, because those are the only permit applications that are appealable by the general public.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bonner. Yes, Commissioner London.
Thanks for the chance to speak. I've been listening carefully to everything, and I've been thinking a lot about the many, many heritage tree issues we've decided before. And when I think about this in the context of all those, as has been said before, there's not a threat to loss of life. These trees are in fair to good condition. They have many years of life left. I imagine they're providing a lot of shade and beauty to the residents. And I'm not seeing anything clear cut that this is a situation that is going to continue to damage the property, or that it's the cause of the damage. So I'm leaning against, I'm leaning in favor of keeping these trees. I'm not seeing any evidence that we've seen in the past that's given us pause present. It just seems like a much clearer case. And I'm not going to say clearer cut because that's a bad pun.
Thank you, Commissioner London. Are there any other questions or comments people want to raise at this time? So from my point of view, I think all of these decisions, and each time we hear an appeal, it's always very difficult, and there are many factors to consider. I think one of the challenges here is, as our public commenter, Mr. Edmonds, pointed out, and was stated in the beginning of the presentation by staff, we have specific criteria to follow when we're reviewing the appeals. And there are 3 criteria that are not sort of that are challenged by this request to take down these trees. The trees are in a healthy condition, and we are a heritage tree city, so that is a very significant criteria. We also have this value. This species is currently a high value species according to the criteria that we have, and there are suggested, although they may be costly, feasible alternatives that have been presented. So I think my point of view on this at this time is that, in fact, I don't see evidence for us to overturn the denial by staff based on the criteria that we see, although I am concerned about the health impacts from the mold that the Danielson family is experiencing. And I also agree with some of the suggestions around not having enough information to really understand the cause of the issue. And I think it is difficult to say that the cause is absolutely the tree root, when what is certainly the cause of the mold is the moisture. And we also know that we see issues where there can be multi-factors. Trees may be one of them, but they may not be the only factor. So I don't think we're at a point where I would say, even if the trees were removed, that all of the issues would subside. So that's where I stand at this time. Is there, yes, go ahead, Commissioner Gallard.
Yeah, one other, I know that appellant, Mr. Danielson, sort of mentioned his legitimate concern that, you know, maybe this was going to keep happening over decades. And what comes to my mind is if the repairs were done and the remediation was done, and then in 5 years or 7 years or whatever it might be, they were back in the same situation with moisture and, you know, all the same issues, that there's an opportunity to reapply, correct? To take down the tree.
And I would like to build off of Commissioner Gaylord's question to add my question before someone on staff interjects, which is, how would this situation be reviewed under the new criteria? And particularly given the conversation, as Commissioner Gaylord's pointing out, that we're having tonight around the fact that the root cause is not known. And if these mitigation steps are taken and damage were to continue in the future, could that be a part of the conversation as if there is a request to remove the trees in the future? And it could be Christian, it can be Joanna, but I'd like to hear somebody from the staff side address that. Thank you.
Sure, I'll have a stab at it. The first question is, can the application be resubmitted at some point in the future if there is future damage? Answer to that question is yes. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and I'm still getting familiar with it myself, that's specified in the revised ordinance that within 1 year, an applicant can resubmit an application. And then for the second question, I think that I don't know that anything significant would change under the new criteria, except perhaps if it was in the context of proposing to do the actual work, like the actual repair work that was needed. If that was associated with construction, you know, that's now a specific standalone criteria, and there are more specific parameters provided now for guidance for staff and commissioners and council, whomever the deciding party may be, to determine what is a reasonable and feasible alternative when evaluating the cost, the appraised value of the tree in relation to the appraised value of the construction of alternative designs. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it answers majority of it. Thank you. And I think the only remaining portion is if this were to come, so obviously this decision hasn't been made, and obviously the next step would be if there is discontent after this decision, an appeal to City Council. So all of that aside, if the issue isn't resolved in a way that the applicant or appellant are satisfied, and in the future they take these steps that are being recommended, but let's say that as is the fear of Mr. Danielson and Mr. Hoffman, that the damage returns in the future, will that aspect be considered as part of your, or whoever the city arborist is at that time, review of the request for heritage tree removal?
Yeah, certainly. And you know, they would have the history at that point if that was the route that it went with the history of damage and the history of repair, and perhaps at that point they may have more conclusive data showing that the roots are indeed the problem if that is the case. And absolutely, yes, that would be taken under consideration. Yeah.
Thank you. We have two more comments. The first from Commissioner Martin and the second from Commissioner Gaylord.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that what I hear is, like, when considering alternatives and looking at things like repairs, it's what's considered reasonable and feasible. So to me, like a sidewalk crack or pavers being unlevel doesn't, and repair of that doesn't rise to the level of weighing the balance of taking down a tree like that. So I just want to point out that, yes, they can reapply, but I would hate to give the impression that you want to come back with some fixing a little wooden stairway and some, I know that's inconvenient, but that is maybe like in the realm of reasonable and feasible given upkeep and maintenance of a facility like that. So let's just be kind of careful that we, you know, take that into factor, because it is something that's considered. Does that make sense?
Thank you. I appreciate that. That makes sense.
Yeah. Mr. Bonner, in your experience with redwood roots like this, once you do this trimming of the roots at a distance like this and remediation, you know, moisture protection for the foundation, in your experience, you know, have you seen examples where the roots just continue to intrude, or do the roots find another route, or what do tree roots do in that situation?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, you know, I don't have a crystal ball, and I just say that because in the context of this scenario, I mean, I think the sentiment that it's not clear that roots are really intruding, you know, under the foundation. I think that's been like a common sentiment that I've heard from most of the commissioners. So it's difficult to ascertain, you know, what the future root development pattern may be. But I would just, I think maybe respond in general that, you know, roots are opportunistic. They grow in environments which are favorable to them, where there's oxygen and moisture, and the right combination of those two elements is where they're going to thrive. And so, you know, taking steps like using a base material that limits both oxygen and moisture, like such as, you know, clean gravel. We do a lot of similar work, you know, with maintaining facilities, you know, as an employee with the city and, you know, part of the public works department. You know, we do a lot of street tree maintenance, and we deal with a lot of conflicts with infrastructure and roots. And, you know, one of the common practices that we've found to be most effective is using some type of base material that is not conducive to root growth, you know, such as clean gravel that's absent of any like soil particles, with filter fabric above it, so it limits soil intrusion over time. You know, can I guarantee that there's not going to be any future root intrusion? No. I don't have enough information to do that, but you know, there are steps that can be taken that I've seen to be effective in limiting root development.
Thank you.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd just like to point out, so everybody on the call is aware of what happens. So we will make a decision this evening, but I just want to make sure everybody knows what the process is like from here out. So if the appellant or the applicant, or, you know, essentially anybody is dissatisfied with the decision we make here, there is the ability to appeal to City Council. And you would want to do that within 15 days. We highly recommend that you reach out to the staff liaison, which in this case is Ms. Joanna Chen, as soon as possible, to make sure that they're aware of your desire. And that would be the next step that would happen. So just please make sure that you make your intent known if you would like to appeal the decision that you hear tonight, regardless of what that decision is. As a commission, do we have other points we'd like to discuss on this issue, or do people feel that there is enough information to move to a motion? I see nodding heads. I'm not sure how to interpret them.
There's enough information to move to a motion.
Okay, thank you. So in this case, the motion would be to, regarding the staff's denial. So does somebody want to put a motion forward?
So the wording's always tricky.
Yeah.
But it would be something to the effect that the EQC is, how do we say this, is in favor of the city's
Support.
position to deny the removal of the 3 trees based on the criteria that was provided.
I believe
Probably
that
a better
is
way to say that, but that I think is what we're getting at for the motion.
that the EQC is supporting, the proposed motion is that the EQC supports the staff's original decision.
Yes.
Do I have a second on the motion? Seconded by Janelle, Commissioner London. And can we take a vote, please? And for this, I believe we have to verbalize our votes. Is that still the case? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So I will do a roll call vote. I'll begin with Commissioner Gaylord.
Aye.
Aye. Commissioner Cabot.
Aye.
Commissioner London.
Aye.
Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner, sorry. I was going to say my own name. Sorry. I would also vote aye. So we have a unanimous vote to support the staff's decision. Thank you again, Mr. Danielson and Mr. Hoffman, as well as our public commenters. We understand these are very difficult decisions, and that this is clearly not the information that you were hoping to receive this evening. And so we appreciate your time, and we recommend that you follow up with Ms. Chen if you would like to appeal the decision. Thank you. With the conclusion of that item, we would move to our next item of business, which is D3. And this is a review and discussion of the Climate Action Plan Subcommittee to move forward on strategies 2, 4, and 6 of the adopted Climate Action Plan. And I believe there may be is there a presentation with this, or was it just the report? There's no presentation. Okay, so there will not be a presentation.
Sorry, may I seek a 2-minute break?
Yes, I would be very happy with that. Is that?
We have a 5-minute break.
5 minutes it is. Okay, so we will reconvene at 7:26. That's what my clock says. I'm not sure. Okay. Thank you.
Please turn off just a reminder to turn off your webcams and mute your microphones while on break. Thank you.
Thank you. It looks like we may still be waiting on Deb to return. I'm not sure if Rebecca, if you are there.
Back.
Hello.
Hello. Sorry.
No.
I had a lot to do.
Totally understand. Don't worry. And Rebecca, could you let us know if you've returned?
I'm here.
Thank you. I saw your unmute, so I took it as a good sign. Okay, so if we're all back, we can resume the meeting at 7:29. Sorry, that's my dog. And we can pick up on item D3. Did somebody want to start the conversation around D3? Perhaps somebody from the subcommittee?
I'm happy to kick it off, Tom, unless you want to. Okay, so the last time we met, I think I'm getting this right, the EQC approved the climate action plan, which then I'm guessing you all know the council approved. So that's great news. They suggested that as staff recommended, take on the staff work on the actions 1, 3, and 5 this year, and defer for now on actions 2, 4, and 6. So the subcommittee is just recognizing staff constraints and also the urgency of climate change, trying to find like a third way forward here. And we're proposing to request council authorize the EQC to work on action number 2, meaning the commissioners without much staff involvement to at least keep moving the ball forward there. Touching base with staff as frequently as they're able, recognizing their time constraints. And then for action number 4, we're requesting that council adopt a 25% goal for reducing vehicle miles traveled. And then in the same way that we're requesting council empower EQC to keep moving the ball forward on number 2, allow the Complete Streets Commission to move forward on action number 4. Action number 4 is going to require quite a bit of examining different potential approaches to VMT reduction, likely including, creating a network of protected bike paths and walking paths throughout the city. Could include rezoning for higher density near transit, higher height limits, for example, near transit. So anyway, so that would be for Complete Streets 2. And the chair of Complete Streets, Adina Levin, is very knowledgeable about a range of these issues. And she's very interested in having the commission continue to work on possible strategies. If you recall, staff's reason to defer on number 4 was there's sort of some approaches in the meantime that are happening. So the TMP, the Transportation Master Plan, is supposed to be moving forward. So that could actually contribute to VMT reduction. Personally, I think it's not going to be enough. And I think that there's value in having some commissioners having a vision for how that's all going to work and supporting both what might happen on the TMP at the staff level, and also what may be happening with the, I forget what it's called, but there's looking at housing in the downtown near transit. So looking at updating some of those ordinances or the plan maybe. But to have the Complete Streets Commission sort of aware of what's going on both fronts. And again, continuing to just research and be prepared when staff is ready to pick that one up, which hopefully would be July 2021. And then on number 6, we're requesting that even though council did not authorize staff to work on a full adaptation plan, which is, if you remember, we were proposing originally a moratorium on building, and we sort of fell back to, well, let's at least come up with a really robust plan for protecting Bellhaven adaptation plan. So that's not going to happen this year, at least from a staff perspective. But are there ways we can at least, because it's my understanding that there is a staff person who's attending meetings at the county level on sea level rise, and for that person to at least just provide a quarterly update to council on what the latest is, because I feel like council is not really very up to speed, or hasn't been until we started talking about this issue with them, even though there is someone on staff who is attending those meetings and getting that information about costs and that type of thing. I think it would be really helpful for that person to either update council, or for us potentially to have a commissioner who goes to those, whatever meetings might be public, attend those, and then provide as part of our quarterly update to the council, include that in the adaptation, whatever we're learning at the county level, to provide that update to the council so that they are more aware of what's going on, especially as it might impact their decisions around development in District 1. And then finally, I think it's important to make sure that council is very clear that they want to see progress against the 9 metrics that we identified in the CAP. And I'd like to see them receive updates, perhaps quarterly, or sorry, staff provide updates quarterly to the EQC and then annually to the council.
I had a clarifying question on this part of the memo. Just when you say the metrics request the update, do you mean on all of them or just on these 3? Or I was just curious which actions, if it was all inclusive or specific to certain numbers, that you were hoping we would be reported out to the EQC and council.
Yeah, so the metrics we identified, and I can probably pull them up, but they were gasoline sales. They were independent of, I mean, they could be tracked back to specific actions, but they were natural gas accounts, how many furnaces have been replaced by heat pumps, et cetera. Yep. So I want to make sure we're getting a system in place to start tracking those things immediately, and that we get in the habit of this, quarterly cadence of reporting that somewhere. Because one of the real pitfalls of many climate action plans that I reviewed from other cities is, in 2009, a lot of cities passed these climate action plans, and then they just sat on a shelf for 5 years, 7 years. No one reported how they were doing. No one even, and then you come back and you look 5 years later and you look at, did they do any of these things? And it's clear that many cities didn't, they had staff turnover or whatever, but they just didn't do them. So I'm hoping that we can sort of set a different example, which is we have these 9 metrics, it's not 20, but it's 9. And we're going to set up systems so that we can report on them and then report those.
And thank you, that's really helpful. And sorry, Tom, Do you want to go ahead?
Sure. So to partially answer your question, the 9 metrics go beyond the 3 measures outlined in this memo. They're reporting against other things also, like number of gas furnaces
Right. That's what I,
replaced, et cetera.
that's
Yep.
what I, yeah, okay.
Right.
That's
And
what I
then,
thought, so that's why I was confused.
yeah, and then to build on something Josie just said, there are 2 big differences about activity level in this plan compared to many cities' prior plans. And that is this updating and cycling of information as part of the plan. And so the annual update to the council about what additional measures it'll take to get on track. And then this kind of quarterly update about what is being learned about where things are going. So building in those quicker feedbacks to help us keep our focus, because this, as the start of the memo points out, this climate problem just keeps getting worse. Every time they adjust the periscope, they see more problem.
Yeah. Do you guys need any color on that? Because I'm happy to, in a minute or two, tell you what even since I presented to the council, what the latest developments are.
No, well, I'm interested, but I just realized I might have messed up. Did we have any public, at which stage are we bringing public comment into this, since there isn't a formal presentation?
Thank you, Vice Chair Price. I'm not Vice Chair, Chair Price. So, I mean, it's really the subcommittee that's presenting. And so when they're,
Okay.
maybe, I know you were asking clarifying questions, and that's good. But if you're starting to get into discussion, then
Yeah.
you need to have public comment before then.
That's what I wanted to. So for the subcommittee's perspective, at what point do you feel like you've presented the information and you want us to invite public comment?
I feel like, I mean, unless you guys want the color on the urgency of the issue, I feel like I presented the gist of what we're requesting EQC to vote on.
Okay, thank you. So Ms. Lucky, do we have any public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair Price. So I'm just going to give a reminder to members of the public who are in attendance. If you wish to provide public comment, please raise your hand, which is typically right next to where your name is, and then I'll have the ability to open up your microphone, and then you'll be able to provide your public comment to the EQC for up to 3 minutes. And with that, I will check to see if I've got any hands raised. I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, so that means that we are returning to discussion, which I found myself jumping into and realized, wait, no, public comment. I would be curious to hear the updates that you had mentioned, Josie. I don't know if there are other questions, clarifying questions people want to ask before we move on to that.
Okay, so one of the main ones was came from a journal called, I think it's Reviews of Geophysics, and basically did a meta study. And if you remember that Paris is trying to target us to stay below 2 degrees C, and actually 1.5, just 2 degrees C, but hopefully 1.5 if we can achieve it. And what this meta study said is it's pretty clear that we're not going to make 1.5. In fact, there's some indication, like there's like a 60% chance that within the next 5 years, we're going to blow right through 1.5. And the study thought that even 2 probably wasn't going to happen, that the highest probability, the range that's the highest probability, I think was like 2 point, it's in the memo, but 2.4 to 3.5, something like that. So it's looking like 3 degrees Celsius may end up being, right now it's looks like the most likely scenario. Yeah, Tom.
So I just glanced at the memo. It's 2.6 to 3.9 degrees C, and that has a 66% probability that will be in that range. And the the other thing the memo mentions and cites a link to is the damage is not linearly proportionate to the degrees. The damage rises much more quickly or further than the degrees change. Something I've heard before is that 2 degrees C has 4 times the damage and suffering as 1.5 degrees C. I don't want to think much about 3.9 degrees C, but it seems like that kind of thing will be grim. So we're just getting more information that the building is burning, and it is time to act.
Yeah, and I'll just add one other thing. I've been struggling with the urgency of this problem and how, to me, it more resembles like a war in terms of the level of devastation, the level of human suffering that will result from it, and the level of mobilization that's needed by a society to combat it. A war or maybe a pandemic. And yet the government structures that we have in place for dealing with war are, the executive of a body, our country can decide to declare war with Congress's approval, and then can make a lot of really fast decisions about, troops to deploy and battles to be prepared for. And similar in a pandemic, right? We order stay-at-home orders. It's just done. We, force people to change their behavior. You must wear a mask if you're going to enter a public place. And we don't do like 2-year studies and, community building around these concepts. So in my view, climate change is similar. I mean, every minute actually really counts. Every day counts. And so taking really extended periods of time to act slowly, deliberately, which government is good at doing. I'm not sure it exactly applies. Well, I don't think it's going to work on this problem. And so I kind of think there needs to be there almost needs to be like another way for government to organize around tackling this problem. And I don't know what that is, but I guess what we're proposing here is staff is overwhelmed already with 1, 3, and 5. And we've got some commissioners who are already dedicating their spare time, in some cases, to tackling this issue. And if they are willing, can we organize those, qualified commissioners to actually take on some of this work? And it's not standard for sure. And I'm sure it won't be, there'll probably be some issues with it, but I'm just trying to be sort of creative and find, another way.
I like that. I really like that. And I think that we can make a lot of progress on 2, 4, and 6. Even while the staff and city council can't address it this year, we can make a lot of progress.
Thank you. I just want to hear from, so one of the things I know that the part of the reason that the staff need to be involved seems to be because there's all of this regulation around what does a city have to consider prior to making the decisions. And so I'm just wondering what, Rebecca, I don't know from your point of view, from the staff's point of view, kind of what, to help answer this question, if the EQC were to raise this, what kind of information or how would we go about getting answers to these questions to be able to sort of suss out where, like Josie's saying, where a typical boundary would be versus where we can push that boundary in the spirit of the emergency that we are in?
So I just want to make sure that I'm clear on the question as well. So
I think my question is, Josie's pointing out that how can we engage non-staff in developing these potential city actions in a way that is, given all of the I'm trying to think how to say it. So it strikes me that every time we have a recommendation, there's a bunch of analyses that have to go on from the city staff's perspective. And I believe the reason for that is that it is part of the way that the city is regulated to ensure several considerations are made on behalf of the public. So I think my question is, in the spirit of recognizing Josie's point that this is an emergency, right? We declared a climate crisis. How do we work to expand the pool of time available to address these issues without violating or compromising, or at least having a way of addressing the reasons that staff do these analyses, et cetera? This makes sense. I'm trying to understand where the boundaries are and where we might work together to explore pushing those boundaries.
Can I just jump in with one clarifying point? Sorry.
That's okay.
The 2, 4, and 6, none of them involve a policy, like a city ordinance. None of them involve passing a law that's going to govern people's behavior. 2 is setting a goal and then tracking the goal on like a website. I think the goal should probably go in front of council, but it's not going to be forcing people to behave differently, citizens to behave, or restricting their rights in any way. 6 is just sort of an update exercise. It's not going to affect citizens at all. 4, you could argue maybe the setting the goal will eventually lead to some policies, but the commissioners wouldn't be doing public outreach on the policies or anything. They'd be doing sort of like the legwork for whatever those policies might be. So.
And are there, so totally agree. And then I think my question is, are there any, my experience has been that whenever we have something, then you guys have to go do your staff report. And then both of those little things go together. And so if any of this still involves a staff report, like to Josie's point, like she's saying it doesn't involve these other components. Is there any component that would require staff time? And if that's so, how could we explore finding flexibility in the system to address the issue of finding more time to address 2, 4, and 6? Does that make sense?
Yes. So I can take it, step by step here. So for action number 2, where it says set goals for EV uptake and gasoline sales reductions for the community, and what's being recommended is to empower the EQC to set those goals. And make a recommendation to council. One possible pathway is to have a subcommittee around that to research what an appropriate goal might be, and what the goal could be for gasoline sales. Because I don't believe we established a goal for EV uptake, but we did for gasoline sales, right?
That's how we established in this council-approved goals for both. Is that not correct?
So looking at I just pulled it up. The text is support setting regional goals for increasing EVs and decreasing gasoline sales. So announce and promote goals for when making all new vehicles to be electric by 2025. So yes, you're correct, yeah. And so that's 100% by 2025. And reducing gasoline sales each year by 10% based on the total reported in 2018. And to track progress on both goals publicly on an annual basis. So that was what was adopted by the City Council.
I'm not sure if the regional part was part of what they adopted. I know when we met as a group to set those goals, we certainly said it was city, not regional. So I don't know how that got in there, but that's not, I thought it was citywide.
Right. So that is what the EQC did recommend. And again, so once the EQC made their recommendation, staff had to look at what resources we have, what departments would be involved, and what we could really do, and offer suggestions on where efforts and energy might be best placed and what we could best place our energy in based on the current budget and based on the resources that we do have. And so that was ultimately adopted by City Council. So it was partially the EQC's recommendation and partially staff's recommendation together. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a good point though. Like if some version of this memo that the subcommittee is presented to EQC is passed by EQC and goes to council, then maybe we could ask for an amendment to number 2 that make it, because we're proposing that commissioner resources be applied, that we revert back to it being a city, because I don't think it makes sense to do on a regional level. I mean, I wouldn't, tell the county they shouldn't do it, but I don't think that a Menlo Park citizen buying an EV and then that getting rolled up to the county level is going to be really impactful for anyone within Menlo Park. So I think it needs to be tracked at the city level. So maybe we could just amend that. And to Rebecca's point, her reason to make it the way it was a resource constraint, and for freeing up some resources in a different form, then we could change that one, I think.
Yeah.
But I would also just clarify that it's what agency is best positioned to do that. And so we have PCE that is already marketing, EV rebates and has a lot of marketing out there. And so they've already been doing it. And so I guess what staff is looking at, again, is a capacity, but also who is best maybe suited to take on this task if we can't do it. So there is money allocated in here from $0 to $20,000 to either give to PCE or the county to really help launch an effort that would benefit Menlo Park, but would have widespread kind of impact in the county, rather than each city trying to do its own marketing campaign on EV. So that was the strategy. And I'm not saying that is the way to go, but that was what the recommendation was for the path forward, again, to really focus on building electrification, EV charging, and eliminating fossil fuels from municipal operations, which is a very big ask. But we're up for that task as well. So it was just a strategy.
And I think that if there's a subcommittee appointed to work on number 2, I think they could come back with a recommendation of which pieces, the county does the marketing, the city does the tracking, or, whatever. There's some delegation of resources, and Rebecca's right. Like there may be some agencies that are more suited to do the marketing. Let's just say. Maybe we have a little web page and we do some social media every once in a while at the city level, but maybe the county is the one who's doing mailers or whatever, the PC, I don't know. But I think the subcommittee could look at all that.
I agree. And I think there is a material difference between what PCE is working on and what we're talking about here. While we don't have the legal power to enforce these goals, these are governance. These are setting goals of where we want our city to be. And they're not market-based. They're not incentives. We don't have the money to give people incentives to get an electric car. We're saying in terms of governance, we want the city, we want to rally our citizens to voluntarily help us hit these goals. So far across the country, and even in Silicon Valley, the market-based approach is not working fast enough. I just saw a stat that in the Bay Area, we're at 3% of our vehicles are electric vehicles. We're not going to get there in time if we don't have some governance in on this. So this is a great chance for Menlo Park to lead. And I think PCE is looking, and the rest of the cities are looking to Menlo Park to see us lead on this kind of a governance effort. And again, it sounds ironic because we don't have the power to enforce it, but it's a different frame and it's a different statement, and it's what needs to happen if we're going to meet climate goals and have other cities follow us and meet climate goals as well. And this is what I do 24/7. So I'm happy to be on the subcommittee that helps us figure out how to get there.
And I think, sorry, I just want to go back to my question, because I think if we put something like this forward, I just want to feel like we understand how the collaboration would work, because the reason council approved it the other way was because of the staff burden. And so if we're going to propose it, I just want to make sure we're figuring out how to alleviate it, or we have a path to do that. And I'm still not clear exactly how that would work.
Yeah, so maybe I'll ask a question, Rebecca. If there was a subcommittee on number 2 and Complete Streets took number 4, and then either Chris Lamb or whoever's attending the the county adaptation meetings provided a quarterly update, or we assigned someone within the EQC who was willing to attend those meetings and then provide that as part of the EQC, the chair update every quarter. How would you see interacting with those groups? Would you feel like, because with the subcommittee, the CAP subcommittee, we met every 2 weeks for an hour or so, and sometimes didn't meet, sometimes met more frequently, but would you feel like a light oversight on those would work, or what's your opinion about that?
So I would probably need to know a little bit more what the desired outcome is and how long these, so I mean, what's the timeline for coming to a resolution on these by the EQC? Because that can then help me gauge where I am in the process of the other 3 CAP action items that need to move forward, and how much time will be taken away from those activities in order to address or support these activities with the subcommittee. And then also determine how much level, right? Which, then it could also impact your timelines with these action items if you're not able to get staff input in a timely manner, or to, because otherwise we're going to be in this catch-22 of, you're coming up with great ideas, but then we kind of come in and say, well, actually, we don't have these kind of resources to do it, and then you're back. So I think it's good to still have that collaboration if it's possible. So I think I would need more information to make that determination of, again, how long do you think each of these activities would take with the subcommittee, what you're expecting from staff, as far as, is it meeting bi-weekly? Would that be helpful?
I'm just gonna go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
So I'm sensing we have a little bit of a chicken and egg problem with number 2, which looks like the higher effort level for the EQC subcommittee that might form. But if the subcommittee members were willing to put in the effort to define a plan that they would want to be following, that would define more of the actions, because I imagine them wanting to meet pretty quickly with PCE to try to inspire and understand what PCE's level of marketing commitment might be like, seeing how we think it may apply to Menlo Park, and whether we want to go with that as enough, or whether we think some other local effort in addition to that on marketing is enough. So that's the marketing side, but then flipping around to the metric side, measuring the local metric, and also I guess there is some marketing of the local metric. If PCE were willing to track things on a by-city basis for all its cities, then each city would have that increased leverage of their citizens knowing they're a bigger fraction of their little city, so that they can be really contributing to these patriotic goals.
I'll just point out that I'm the head of the Transportation Working Group for the Peninsula Clean Energy Citizens Advisory Committee. So I am pushing forward on this at the PCE, and they're very receptive. They're interested, like this is new and crazy, but they're up for it. So they've already made efforts to help try to get this data, which is, I know you guys said quarterly, but we're going to be lucky to get it annually. At least for gasoline sales by city. And I already have the data from the California Energy Commission. It's just that there's 10 to 30% underreporting every year. So we'd like to get more accurate data, but we have at least something that we can use today. And that's annual. As far as the marketing piece, yeah, like I said, I think I could easily work with PCE and see what are the options for them to use their marketing budget to help with this effort.
Okay. So I'm gonna, go ahead. Deb.
So I'm thinking what I'm hearing, I've been quiet because I'm just trying to take all this in, is that we want to set goals and we want to track metrics. And in order to set goals, that means you want to move the needle. So that means you need to, and we're not going to do that through a regulatory framework, like demanding people to do things. So that means that you need to increase your awareness through marketing So it strikes me that, you know, we'd have a subcommittee who would set some goals based on some good data and maybe what other cities are doing or whatever. And I would say the fewer the better. I don't think we should have 20 goals. I think we should have like 3 or 4 very practical goals. And then I don't really know a lot about how you track gasoline sales and stuff like that. I mean, I imagine like it would be maybe interesting to see if other leveraged partners out there track this sort of thing. Like, I don't know what Menlo Spark's doing. I mean, I just don't know if there's other clever people doing this kind of thing that we can, it strikes me that everybody wants it. So like maybe there's some way that we can reach out and find out where this is already occurring. But as far as the like trying to move the needle with goals, and this is why I always get like, I harp on metrics. I love metrics as long as that you can get them and you can do something with them. Otherwise, if you're always like, you can't get them or they're inaccurate or whatever, you know, Janelle, we've run into this problem before. And then we find that people are so focused on the goals and the metrics and the numbers that they're forgetting the action. So I want to make sure we don't fall into that trap like we did during our last CAP. And I think that a lot of how we're going to be personally as the EQC, what we can do, I think, is look for ways to help spread awareness. And I think what you mean by governance in the restrictions that we have today, Janelle, is through awareness and marketing and just trying to get an uptick. I don't know what that guy was talking about earlier. It intrigued me and I wanted to ask the question, like, where was he from again? But it sounded like he was doing some really interesting things for other cities. So I think we need to, if we can partner with other people who are trying to do the same, trying to get other cities to have uptake on, and we don't have to figure this out all on our own. Like maybe we need to do a landscape assessment and figure out who's doing what and who's helping cities. Like going back to that gentleman, I don't know if you caught his name or where he's from, but it perked my ears up. I was like, oh, what's that? And you know, Menlo Park's doing it. He's serving 3 or 4 cities that he recommended. So I think we just need to do a little bit of a sort of find out what's out there. Yep. And plug into that and do the best we can to gather whatever data we can get, set whatever goal we can get. And then in my opinion, what's most important than a goal and tracking numbers is seeing the actions, because sometimes there's a lagging, like you could be out there promoting and changing things and then you don't see any metrics and then that makes you look like a failure. But sometimes what happens, it just takes a little bit of momentum to get that going. So I think we need to be careful that like we have some qualitative metrics that are around the actions we're taking to move number 2 forward, and not, I would almost say to me, like the marketing and outreach comes first because that's in our control. We can do that. Goal setting, great, we can have a goal, but let's not shoot ourselves in the foot if we can't even get metrics and they're very difficult and we can only get them once a year. And so I think you get what I'm saying. Like,
I think so. I just want to interject for 1 second and just kind of summarize. So what I'm hearing is, I think we want to be able, it sounds like, to be able to move the needle on action 2 and to fill in ahead of what staff would need to do. There's kind of a scoping and timeline and understanding and identifying partners and things like that that would be a deep dive into number 2. And I know that the subcommittee has done a lot of work, but it sounds like this is one area where we would do kind of, we could do, or a subcommittee could do a deep dive. And as Janelle was talking about, look at PC, or as Deb was saying, find out if there are other partners like the gentleman who was on the phone call who did public comment at the beginning, but what other partners would we identify, put those scopes of work and sort of timelines together. And then at that point, we might be well positioned to pass it off to staff. That doesn't mean that staff would be like, I don't think any of us are in a position to say, yeah, 100% staff could just pick it up from there, but we would at least be giving them, finding the right transition point. And if people are willing to do the work on that scoping aspect and timeline development aspect, that's what we could do in the interim. Is that what I'm hearing? Am I saying that back correctly?
One clarifying question, maybe I'm missing the boat here, but I think what I've heard loud and clear is that there is no staff time. So like, our goal for number 2 would be not to involve staff. It would actually be going outside of staff's time altogether. So like, it wouldn't be a transition to staff. And quite frankly, numbers 1, whatever, 3 and 5, you know, is probably going to keep them pretty busy for, let's just say, I don't know, Rebecca, what your plan is, but I think that if I'm understanding this correctly, the council's coming to us and saying the staff doesn't have time for this. So I don't think we can go back and say, well, we'll help them get, like whatever you just said, Ryan, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, but
no, I don't think you're misunderstanding. I think what I'm hearing is I think that Rebecca and the city staff wouldn't be in a position without a clear scope and timeline to say what staff would need to do in order to be able to move that whole thing through a city council process, right? Because whatever we recommend is going to have to get approved to a certain extent, right? And so I think we want to take it as far as we can, but at this moment in time, maybe I'm wrong, and if I am, Rebecca or whoever, tell me. But my concern is, without knowing that level of detail, staff may not be able to say whether or not they would have to weigh in on something because of some requirement or whatever is a part of the recommendation. We obviously hope that's not the case, but we want to take it as far as we can get it, and then from there understand what the next step is. And what we can say to city council is we are going to develop this at least to this point, and we're committed to not requiring staff time, but instead exploring, to this point, and then from there learning what would be needed for the city to take further action. I just don't think we're in a position to say we absolutely would not use any staff, and I don't know that we could go in front of council and say that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Okay, I get your point, which is that, like, if EQC, let's say we approved this plan, what the subcommittee proposed, let's just say that, and then it went to council, staff would do a staff report on that. Yes, and staff staff might then say we can't support this, and so we don't want that to happen. And so what I hear Ryan saying is maybe we take an extra month, I guess. We assign Janelle and maybe one other person to do a deep dive and come back with a memo that says, on number 2, here's exactly what the subcommittee would do. We would need to meet with staff once a month for 1 hour, and, the end of which will be, social media, 3 social media posts a month of this type, and, maybe a graph on a website or something like that. And we will provide the coding, and it just needs to be like cut and paste into the city website, whatever. So it gets to that level of detail, and then staff can say, oh yeah, we can sign up for that, or no, we can't. We need to modify it. Is that kind of what you're thinking, Ryan?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. Or they could say, like, we can do the meeting and we can do the social media post, but we can't do the graph or whatever. But it needs to get, I think, to that level so that we don't face the thing of, like, we repeat what just happened and then city council's like, didn't we just decide this? So that's exactly what I'm saying. Thank you. That was a way better way. Does that make sense, Deb?
Yeah, kind of. As long as I think the flavor of whatever we say back to them needs to not look like we're just going to go whittle away a bunch of new ideas and say, hey, we've got some great new things and we're going to meet every once in a while. And then we're going to ask the city, even though you told us no, we're going to ask the staff to do this. Like, I think we need to make it, to me, this is not, maybe I'm being ridiculous, but this doesn't seem, I'm probably looking at this too simplistically. I mean, honestly, I just see us forming a set of metrics, getting a goal together, and proposing a couple clever marketing things. They already have I mean, I see postings all the time from the city announcing things like what's going on with fires or what's going around, like just important things. Yeah. We could actually, it could be so turnkey that city staff is like 15 minutes of pushing a button to send, like, to me, this is just not that difficult. So I feel like we're overanalyzing a bit. I just want to make sure whatever goes back to a memo or whatever should say, hey, thanks, City Council. We really appreciate that you're moving forward with the staff's time to do 1, 3, and 5. We're going to, for 2020 or into 2020, well, for the calendar year or whatever we say, we're going to take these 4 things, and here's some very concrete things that we as a subcommittee will plan to do. And if you grant us that authority, then we may need, and I don't think we have to get prescriptive, we may need up to 3 hours of staff time to help get our marketing pieces out. Like that in my mind is very nuts and bolts, clean, practical. Yeah. And so that's why that's what I'm getting at. I think that this is pretty cut and, like, number 6 to me is like, yeah, maybe one of our committee members could go to these meetings and just provide, routine updates, because the city's not getting that right now. I'm not clear why a staff member is going to that and they're not getting updates, but we can maybe, and I don't know if a member of the public could, but those like 2 and 6 seem like easy potential things we could do. We've got a passionate team here. We'll spend a lot of time on the cap. So it strikes me that we'd be pretty motivated to do some of these things. And we have good partners, right? Number 4, I don't even know what to do with number 4. To me, that's like, I know that's important, but I don't get how to do that. I don't see a path forward. And so I would just almost like, I don't know how to, that's a nebulous thing to me that I don't know what to do with. But 2 and 6 seem.
And I think we're all on the same page. I think I just worry that if we're not more explicit, that it's not that different from what we said before. So because there is some reason why staff or why whoever recommended and we would it got winnowed down to the 3. And so I just want to make sure when we bring it back, as everybody else is saying, that we're able to be explicit so that in a way we make it harder for the city council to say no because we're so clear about exactly what's needed, and the ask is essentially becomes like minimized, or it seems very doable, right? I think when it stays as this nebulous thing, even if we look at it and we think it makes sense, something might get lost in translation. I just don't want us to get to have it be sort of like, well, didn't we just decide we didn't have time? Nothing's changed. We still don't have time, right? So I just want to make sure we have that level of information when we bring it to them.
So it sounds like we just need to meet separately and refine this memo and make it to accomplish the things that you're suggesting. Like maybe we need to take it into a more brainstorming session about what that looks like and how it should be worded and how it should be presented.
And Josie?
2 things. Council actually, they were ready to just take this verbiage, most of this verbiage of 2, 4, and 6, and put it into the motion that they were ready to deploy the commissioners to do this work.
Okay.
But it was Nick Figueros who said, well, wait a second. We don't know like how much, he didn't say hand-holding, but like how much staff time is this going to take up with these commissioners off doing this work? And so we you have to delay the vote on the cap. And the council said, we don't want to delay the vote on the cap, so just take it out. But actually the council very much wanted to deploy the commissioners in this way.
So yeah, I think if we can come back and say like, here's exactly what we would need and we can allay those concerns, I think we're in a really good position to do it. I just want to be able to have something to say back to a comment like that, should a comment like that come up again. We make it just that much easier that we can just move it through, and council's like, well, they're saying this is what they need. It's fine. We can do that. Done.
I agree.
Janelle?
I agree that it's a pretty much as simple as Deb laid out. And in case you guys missed it, the real value here is I've done the scoping. There is no one else doing this on the gasoline sales. Absolutely no one. No one.
She's right.
I mean, no one. Okay. So the merit in this is the mere fact that the city council is approving for the first time setting a goal around gasoline sales, which is the only metric that really matters on climate. Like, that's novel that everybody's thinking about, could we just have more EVs in the world? That seems like a good idea. And maybe that would result in less gasoline sales, but the whole point is to displace gasoline. And so it's ethereal and it's hard to maybe get your head around, but the fact of the council approving this is the enormous nugget of benefit. And from there, it's baby cakes. It's just, like Deb was saying, it's a very simple announcing of that the city council has approved this goal. This is our goal, and trying to rally the city residents to get on board with the goal, which, we can totally, I don't think it will take much staff time or staff time to actually execute.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is something that, quite frankly, the city would be delighted and just delighted to know that they have an anxious group of 6 to 8 people who are willing to go out on their behalf and do this. To me, it's a non-issue. And if now I'm understanding that the comment came up, I get it. And here's why. It's because sometimes commissioners, not necessarily ours, but other commissions, have gone off and on their own, and they kind of think they have all this power to just do things. And then they get the city, well, the city should do X, Y, and they put the staff in a position where they can't help. So they're sensitive to that. So Ryan, I don't think we need to address that? Because I think that really what we're talking about is it's just pretty logical and should get I don't think there's going to be any objection to it. And I think if anything, we just need to make sure our mission is not like what they need to hear from us is that we're not trying to just cook up a bunch of stuff that now dump it over to the city and say, we need 20 hours. Like, you know, so I think we just say, look, we estimate that this will take, we're going to do the brunt of the work. And on average, in any given month, I think it's this simple. On any given month, we need an average 2 to 3 hours or every given week or whatever it is of staff time. And I think we keep it very high level and we don't get into a lot of prescriptive detail. And I think it'll be fine. That's what I think we should do.
That makes sense. And do we want to introduce any way that we're going to hold ourselves accountable to that in case, because again, the concern isn't coming from the council, it's coming from Nick. And so I just want to make sure how can we take the responsibility to hold ourselves accountable to whatever we say we're going to take, that is what we take, and we sort of stay on that path.
I mean, that's up to us. Like, we don't really have, there's no
yeah, no, I agree.
Say we're governing ourselves, and it's not the city's responsibility to say, hey, you know, you guys aren't doing your job. Like, that's on us. I think there's no way to do that. And I think we have proven that we have a lot of energy here. So I don't think that's I can imagine somebody from the city council saying, well, how can we ensure that you're actually going to stick to your 2 to 3 hours of staff time that you're saying? And so what I'm saying is, how can we articulate that point when we're addressing the council? Because the staff will just say no to us. They'll just go, no, we don't. Remember, we don't have, like, they're going to push back and say, if we want more of their time, then it's going to just be sort of them saying to us, sorry guys, you're overstepping.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think that maybe we write that in, like, if it appears that the subcommittee requires more of staff's time than X, then you know, that will be noted, and we'll have to come back to council to discuss. Like, it's just like, it's the accountability can be that staff says no, as Deb was saying, and that but we know that is a part of the conversation.
Yeah, so we want to have an open dialogue and make sure we're holding ourselves accountable to that. And the only reason I'm raising is because, again, like, if I was in Nick's shoes and I was having people that report to me be asked to use their time on other projects, I would feel more comfortable. And I think it's a more well-rounded argument if we can state that we recognize we're using those resources and we are going to hold ourselves accountable to this limit.
Yeah, I think that's good.
Okay. And then I had one sort of small thing I wanted to ask. Do you think we can, sorry, Rebecca, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to add that there's always another pathway as well. So, I mean, it's not that the answer is no. I mean, what, you know, Nick Figueros is saying is that given the current budget that was adopted, that these are all the resources we have. And we, you know, I mean, literally asking for 3 hours is asking for a lot more. And that means that I may not talk to PCE this week because I need to, you know, work on getting the EQC social media, you know, message out to Clay, and Clay's got some revisions. So then I got to go back to the EQC or I've got to, you know, maybe massage it or something. You know, there's just a lot of nuances that go on into it. But what I want to make the point is that they adopted a budget. They've, you know, reduced positions, frozen positions, but there is always the opportunity that they can unfreeze positions. They can add resources in. And so that's the other pathway as well, if that is the way you want to go. So I just wanted to point that out.
And I think that's the beauty of tracking it, right? And saying, like, look, this is the cost, like, to Josie's point, like, this is an emergency. And if we aren't able to address this, we're just asking for 3 hours, and we're saying we are at that limit where, like, 3 hours isn't available. So the EQC is recommending we really do need to invest in additional resources or whatever it is. I'm just making this up, but I think there's that magical aspect, as you were saying, Deb, of, like, tracking those metrics so that we can make those cases at that, if that should happen at that time. Janelle?
Yeah, I do appreciate Rebecca's point that while we may think it should only take 10 minutes to hit the push button on the social media. There is a review process. Like, council's going to have to look at whatever we post, I think. They'll have to look at it. You know, we'll have to be vetted. And so I guess our compromise could be, look, if it takes longer than we thought for your vetting process, then we'll post less often. And as we get the hang of it and we know what your parameters are, which we don't know squat about them right now, right? Once we know the parameters, we'll get a whole lot faster at this. Product where you will bless off on it, it'll take a lot less time. I'm willing to go through that process.
Yeah, and I think to Deb's point too, that we're a really reasonable group of people. We can't speak to all commissions for all history in Menlo Park, and we all have heard stories about commissions that have put the city in difficult position or staff in a difficult position, and I know that's not any of our goals, and that, but at the same time, the best predictor of future performance is past action, and so you could see where the city is coming from. So I think including all of these and recognizing that if I were in their shoes would just give me more confidence that we know what we're doing and we're really open to that conversation.
I do think it would help them probably even just to sort of allay fears or anxiety if we did, Janelle, maybe we don't really know yet, but let's just guess 3 or whatever the number is. Offline, we'll talk about it. But what is, like, how many social media posts can we imagine doing in a month, you know? And just so they have an idea, like, here are the things that we think where staff is like a gatekeeper or like a touch point.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's 3 social media posts, it's, you know, 1 hour touch base once a month or whatever. Like, I do think that would be helpful.
Yeah, Deb.
The other alternative is, just with all the sensitivities around pandemic and times being spent and resources, we could just, is there any reason we couldn't just do the social media campaign ourselves? Like, I mean, Clay posts stuff on Nextdoor as Clay. Why couldn't we just be Deb Martin? Like, I know, okay, maybe this is one thing, is I don't know if we can say the EQC, because then we're doing,
I think
or we can channel it through Menlo Sparks or some kind of entity. We're just trying to get messaging out. So do we really even, I'm going to be devil's advocate, do we even really need the city? Like, is it even worth saying we need staff time right now? So, like, don't look future, just go 6 months. Okay. Just like if we did a memo and said, right now times are challenging, we've got the energy, we'd like to do this. We at least want to get outreach out. We can do it all on our own, and we can help get it in front of the residents. It doesn't need to look like it's coming from the city necessarily. Or the city can endorse us to do that, maybe. But I'm just arguing the point is maybe we just tell them we don't even need staff time at all for this particular thing.
So my experience has been that, and I know I haven't been doing this that long, but that if the city is going to if the public is then going to go to the city with the questions, the city is going to want to be involved, and it's very hard to kind of take them out of the loop when you're looking at a public facing announcement. But I do think, like, to your point, Deb, that's the kind of stuff I was trying to point out about where could we push the boundaries. Is it possible for, like, would this be considered, so for example, like, nobody except for the mayor, right, is supposed to talk to the press on behalf of the city. But is it possible that people could post independently messages that are aligned with the cities, are aligned with the CAP goals, right? So I don't know the answers to those questions, but that's the kind of question that I was trying to get at, is what do we really need what do we really need to use staff time for, and where might there be flexibility? And I personally don't know. My experience is we tend to lean on the side of, like, everything goes through staff, and is there a way for us to push a little bit that's reasonable? So I don't know.
Janelle, did you have your hand up?
I actually wanted to ask about something else, but I just wanted to get Rebecca's insights on this. Rebecca, I know there's, everybody's in line to get hold of Menlo Park's communication channels. That's what we were told in the past when EQC wanted to do communication. Is it hopeless to ask for any social posts? Is that just like get in line behind 80 other people who are already waiting, or is that something that could actually happen these days?
Yeah, so at the moment, so Clay Curtin is the public engagement manager, and he oversees all of the post, branding, things that go along with that nature. you know, I think that the EQC can create content, which they can give to him, but, you know, I think, like you said, there may perhaps be no guarantee that it gets posted, or it's in a queue because the city has other things that they may need to post that are more urgent,
Right.
like public health issues or some other areas, or a project.
Air quality.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but again, it's not to say that it can't be done, but if it's done in such a way where it's easy just to, you know, plop it in there. I mean, he does do that. I do forward him information from, was it, well, and that's like escaped my mind, Energy Upgrade California, or
Right.
yeah. So they actually, and Rethink Waste also sends me some posts that are already just social media ready for Nextdoor or Twitter.
Yeah.
And so I do notice he does take some of those and we'll put them in as he sees appropriate.
How about the EQC website? I remember many years in the past, well, I haven't been there that many years, but anyway, for years in the past, we've asked to update the website and put some information there. Is that an option these days?
No.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
But yeah, and anyway, so but that, I think we're all struggling trying to figure out like where could we find that boundary, and I think the best way to start to understand it better is to give us something to work with, right? So just looking at the time and wanting to be mindful of all of that, it sounds like we're all aligned that we want to figure out how the EQC can move this forward. We're also all aligned that we want to bring a smart proposal to council that acknowledges that the staff just last month or whatever said, we don't have any time to take these items. And we may need a little bit more information to carve out just to say that we understand and we respect that position and we respectfully ask to be given this latitude on these items. So how do we want to go about forming that? Janelle, yeah.
Yeah, I also think we need clarification, and maybe this is the whole chicken and egg thing, but I think we need clarification from City Council that they did in fact adopt these specific goals of the by 2025, all new vehicles are electric, and 10% reduction in gasoline sales.
Is that something we can ask the city clerk, Rebecca? Like, would that be part of the record?
Yeah, it's on the record through the minutes for the meeting.
I asked Betsy Nash. I think she said that she confirmed it as well, but it's not like abundantly clear when you know. But anyway, I haven't seen the minutes yet. Maybe it's abundantly clear there.
But maybe
they adopted the cap, and the cap includes that. So I think they adopted it.
And to that point, I think if you want to kind of push home that point, we could mention that in the memo. Like, here's what we approved. Yeah. So here is what we want to do. Yeah. So I don't know. And Tom?
I was wondering if for action that we might be able to take tonight, would it be possible to form a subcommittee that advances the state of the project a little bit to get to develop either the chicken or the egg, and to bring it back for the commission to decide what they wanted to do next?
I think that's a great idea.
And actually, and I'm wondering, should we do it for number 2, number 4, and number 6? Meaning it's like separate people kind of work on those pieces, or should we just have one subcommittee work on all 3 pieces? No.
I don't know.
Meaning like just the scoping part, the description of what is going to then go on to council for how many hours each one is going to take and that type of thing.
I think less complicated the better. I wouldn't do 3 different groups and just lots of scoping out. I think this needs to be like, as the lens of this needs to be as practical and sort of in right-sized as possible for where we're at today and what will resonate with our city council. So I would not be in favor of 3 groups and coming up with lots of, I just think the subgroup should meet on this memo and come up with some ideas. And then from there, if we need to kind of fan it out, maybe, but I think that the simpler the better.
And the plan is to come back next month for
that's what I think.
Reevaluation. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so Rebecca, just from a process standpoint, this would be forming an ad hoc subcommittee to work through this memo to frame it with some additional considerations to bring it back to present to the EQC next month. Is that a summary of what the motion would look like?
I'm not sure. So someone would need to make a motion.
But is it like, is it called an ad hoc subcommittee? Just to,
Oh, I'm sorry.
if somebody
Yes.
wants to make the, okay. So
Right,
if somebody wants to make the motion, that's the kind of, that's what it would be called formally.
Do we need to name the people in the ad hoc thing in the motion, or can we do those separately? Like, how do you do that?
You can name them in the motion.
Can we
Okay.
name them in the motion? And
Okay,
do we have, go ahead.
No. Go, Ryan. I was going to say Janelle needs to be on it.
So
Can we
there's a
just
vote
deputize some EQC members to go do this? Isn't it kind of a deputizing thing?
I think we can discuss who, am I? No, I'm not frozen. I thought I was frozen, sorry. I think we would, sorry, let me back up. I think we can decide as a group who's on this subcommittee, and then the subcommittee would go out and draft a memo with these additional considerations and then bring it back for next week. But I think as a body, we still have to approve it before it can go to city council.
Yeah, no, I have no, okay, you're right. Okay, so I guess deputizing would be not bringing it back for approval. You're right, sorry about that.
Which,
I think,
that's okay.
Janelle,
Deb?
I think deputizing could be more like, let's say we get to a space where we really want to get metrics, right? And we want to come up with some clever goals.
Yeah.
And maybe somebody's like really like, maybe that's something that, let's say you said, I really want to do this. Like I'm already doing it and I want to, this is my baby. Then we could deputize you to come up with a straw man. Like, we've done this before. So,
Yeah, sorry, I forgot. We hadn't deputized anything in a while.
Yeah, so but that's like an example of where somebody had a bit of expertise in an area and wanted to really go and bring it back to because sometimes it's not efficient to have like big subcommittees, and the person who is trying to get the data just needs to go, and they don't need to worry about meeting with the subcommittee all the time. So that's why the deputizing is good, but we would propose that in a motion when we're ready.
Okay. One other thing I want to raise that you guys are going to hate, but I know I don't know how set in stone it is that the VMT issue would go to Complete Streets. And the reason I say that is that it looks like work from home may be one of the most effective VMT measures there is. And I don't know if Complete Streets is looking at VMT at work from home at all.
It's on the radar screen of anyone who's even got a little bit of knowledge about VMT. It's like the thing everyone's talking about. So I don't know. I haven't spoken to Adina specifically about that issue, but I would say there's like a 99% chance that that's big on her radar.
Okay. I just think of the name Complete Streets and it doesn't sound like working from home to me.
Complete streets and homes.
There you go.
Janelle, you raise a really good point, because quite frankly, with this pandemic, our world may look lots different after this. Like there may be a lot of working from home going on. And I would say that if we were just looking at, not that this is a good thing, but if we were just looking at this metric right now, when I'm driving around, I'm already telling that I can already see the reduction anytime, anywhere that I go. I'm not sitting in a parking lot on El Camino. I haven't been for the last 3 months. So I do wonder whether we kind of get into this, like a lot of companies are reconsidering real estate. And so this may be, you're latching onto a good thing. It's like this whole work from home thing might actually be what triggers the best VMT programs that we can have. And maybe there's a way to kind of promote that thinking a little bit more with strategies that cities have and businesses have. But I think it's a factor that's going to stick around.
So I think we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, into like what the different approaches would be, because I mean, it's a good thought. And like 5 different organizations I'm a part of, that's like what we're talking about a lot. So a lot of people are thinking about it. And I think it should,
that before we hand this baby over to Complete Streets, that they're actually going to think about it.
Right. So I think that as we refine the memo, like the group that's going to refine the memo, I think should maybe give that a little bit more thought.
Okay. That makes sense. And sorry, I got kicked out of the meeting. I'm back. So, so are we in a position now where we have, I don't know if anybody made suggestions for a motion with people's names in it for the this ad hoc subcommittee that we might.
Is there anyone who
potentially-
would like to do it? I'm hoping Janelle wants to do it.
Yeah, I want to do it.
Anyone else who wants to do it?
You know, I would love to do this, guys, but I'm organizing a big ultimate gift thing that I'm very involved with something else right now that's going to occupy probably the next 2 to 3 months of my time, my personal time, heavily. So I just don't think I'm going to be, but I will definitely weigh in however you want me to, or if you want to bring me into specific things, I'm surely glad to help whatever way I can, but I don't think I could do the group right now.
I'm happy, since I'm sort of have the history with the CAP, I'm happy to work with Janelle on it if she would like that.
That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'd love that.
And then
And
is there, go ahead, Ryan.
Did you guys have an idea of how many people? Is 2 people good? Did you want 3?
It's fine. I think
2
two's
people.
fine.
Okay.
I mean,
So we
unless someone
still-
else really wants to do it. Ryan, you want to do it?
I'm flexible. That's one of the reasons I was asking the question. But yeah. So I think if the 2
two
of you
is
feel good
plenty,
about
but-
it, that's great.
Okay.
So maybe we
Tom, I don't think you want to be a part of this, right? I'm reading the body language.
So
No,
does
I
somebody want to?
I want it to happen, but I want great people to be doing it.
Does somebody want to put a motion forward based on this discussion?
Sure. I move that the EQC create an ad hoc committee that is tasked with creating a proposal to the full EQC in the form of a memo about how the EQC proposes to take on items 2, 4, and 6 with minimal staff time. And I welcome any amendments to that.
Thank you.
Maybe just a friendly amendment with a detailed requirements for staff engagement.
Okay, that sounds like there are going to be some, which may be scary, but anyway, okay.
Friendly amendment is to include the 2 people who volunteered to serve on the ad hoc committee in the motion.
Okay, I
So
accept that.
Janelle and Josie.
Okay,
And I would second that motion unless there are other friendly amendments.
Oh, did Rebecca get all that? Rebecca,
Ooh,
get all
dog.
Get it?
Yes, I did. So the motion is to create a ad hoc subcommittee to propose a memo to the full EQC on, make sure I got this right, with a detailed description of the staff time that would be involved to implement these actions.
Mm-hmm.
I would say detailed description of the EQC's proposed role and
Staff requirements, staff time requirements.
Do you want to say detailed or overview? Detailed could be interpreted many ways.
Well, I just meant getting to like 2 hours a month or whatever it is. Like that to me is detailed, but maybe not.
Yeah. I don't know. I just don't know.
Shouldn't the focus of the motion not be? I would say staff. Any mention of staff time should be in the last part of the sentence. It shouldn't. It should say something like a motion to have a subcommittee to create a memo that shows how the EQC proposes to address items 2, 4, and 6 with minimal staff time. I don't think we need detailed staff time. I start to feel like we're trying to. I would just kind of put the flavor more on us, and we're going to come up with an idea, and we might need staff time, and if it is, it's minimal. We don't want to lead with a detailed staff time description. That's not what does that make, did you get that, Rebecca? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So I still second this motion with the new revisions.
great.
Are we ready to vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Do I have to roll call?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So Commissioner London,
Aye.
Commissioner Gaylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Martin,
Aye.
Commissioner Cabot,
Aye.
and I also vote aye. Great.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay. So now we have one remaining agenda item, which is the election of a chair and vice chair. The only information I would like to share at this time is with the birth of his son, James raised that although it's traditionally been true in the last several years that the vice chair would then move into a chair role, he is not interested in doing that at this time. He feels like he couldn't represent the EQC with the energy and time required. So at this point, we don't have a succession plan. And one of the things Rebecca and I talked about was, what does that mean, right? So we talked about the fact that that's been true in the past. And then I think Deb is rolling off the committee in the spring. So, and we know Rebecca has resigned, Rebecca Turley. So at some point we will get a new member. I don't have clarity at this time as to what that timeline looks like. Just to make it clear in terms of who is kind of eligible for taking on a leadership role. And what Rebecca and I talked about was just that the recent history in the EQC has been that transition of vice chair to chair. Sorry, my dogs are barking. So knowing that the kind of risks in not doing that seem to be around kind of the training and protocol and understanding. So one option is we could have 2 new people serve and have additional kind of training and support. Another option is somebody who served previously could fill in either as a chair or vice chair to create some level of experience on that leadership group. So that was the conversation Rebecca and I had when we got the news from James, just to be able to give you guys that information for this conversation. I think any of those options would work. I'm very neutral. I just wanted to be mindful. So the only people eligible for the discussion to be nominated or considered would be Tom, myself, Janelle, and Josie. No other members would be either eligible or would accept the nomination if it were to be given to them. So that is that. Yes, Josie.
So James, you said he didn't want to take the chair role, but is he interested in staying with the vice chair role, or he can't do that either?
It sounded like he was not interested in that. I don't think he explicitly said it, but it sounded like he felt like his priorities were shifting to the extent that a leadership role was not the right fit for him at this time.
Yeah. He's in the weeds with the baby.
I'll just say one thing, and Janelle can probably echo me, and Ryan's been in this role now. I mean, being the chair is not a substantial step up from what we're already doing. Like, we're already attending the meetings. We see it's more like setting the agenda. So I remember when I was chair, I would meet with, at the time, Heather. We would meet every month, like 2 weeks before. We come up with an agenda. We talk through it. And that was one added meeting that I had, but then then you're chairing the meeting, you're running the logistics. And I think they've gotten good at giving some cues of when you, like, I don't know if you get that now, but Clay had kind of started that thing where we got cues, and we can maybe start that again if we needed to. But I just want to point out that I don't know, Janelle, how you feel about it. It's not really that daunting or challenging. And I think anybody here, given what I've seen of all of you are totally capable. So I wouldn't be the least bit shy about it. And I don't think it's going to be an added time burden for you, really. So that makes anybody feel better.
So I agree with everything Deb said. The only additional thing I would add is you are responsible for the quarterly updates to council. And so you do have that requirement as well. And in the world of virtual meetings, you are given a script because there's a more formality associated with exactly. So you read from the script, which is what I was doing in the beginning of the meeting, which is actually kind of nice because I think it just makes sure, even in a slightly unsure environment, that you say all the things that you're supposed to say so that it's following all the right protocol. So that might be reassuring as well. But I would agree with with everything else that Deb said. I think the question is for the, we have a public comment on this topic. Rebecca, would you like to, I guess
Sure.
the question would be, yeah, we have one public comment. Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Edmonds, I'm going to unmute your microphone.
Mr. Edmonds, you may still be muted, it looks like. There you go.
Thank you. Excuse me for butting in. I hope you can bear with me to let you know that I listened to some of the recent discussion after coming back to this meeting after listening to the acceptance speech of Kamala Harris, which was in competition. With regard to the shortage of staff time, which impinges on everything that the committee does, and therefore might be relevant to this agenda item, I'd like to provide you with the information that I am a staff person and I don't need to be paid. And my background includes 5 years of full-time employment on the headquarters staff of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers in New York in the 1970s, plus 40 years experience of involvement in international standards drafting for the International Electrotechnical Commission, which is an organization in Geneva. And that included about 20 years I was in the role, a volunteer role called the Technical Advisor to the United States National Committee for the IEC in relation to one particular specialty technical committee on ultrasonics. And for the past 16 years, I have served as co-convener of a working group of this specialty technical committee for ultrasonics. And my working group has currently 40 members distributed over 16 countries.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds.
I leave you with that information to use as you wish. And it seems to me, listening to the discussion, that you have a lot more to do than can be accomplished by 6 or 8 people. And I would urge you to consider expanding your activities by appealing to the community, and any volunteers who can participate in whatever manner is suitable. Oh yes, one more piece of information about myself. I'm not a United States citizen. I'm an immigrant from United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Edmonds. We really appreciate your enthusiasm and support for the efforts on the EQC, and you have substantial qualifications. So thank you very much for your comment.
Hear, hear.
Oh, sorry. My dog fell off the chair. I am returning us to the conversation we were also having around the structure of the vice chair and chair roles moving forward, and who may serve in those roles. So I don't know if people have thoughts or comments or how we want to shape the discussion around that.
Go ahead, Janelle.
Okay, I was just going to ask Tom and Josie, are you guys interested?
I am not very interested at the moment. You know, I feel like a responsibility to the organization, and whatever the organization needs, like I will do. At the moment, I feel like I'm like knee deep in content and interested in like moving forward on the CAP action items. And because I'm so in the content, I fear that I would not be a good person to like referee the meetings.
Go ahead, Tom.
And very similar to Josie, I also feel like I am very steeped in the details in many groups, including the EQC and the Climate Action Plan, and I want to stay very focused on the technical details and helping things move forward in a number of forums, but I don't feel like I want to try to apply attention to trying to assist this group through managing meetings. So I see lots of great talent out there, and so I want to be more of a technical resource and not necessarily a leader.
Deb? Oh, I think you might be muted.
Yeah, maybe this is more of a question for Rebecca, because I'm not sure if this is possible or not. Do we need to rotate the chair and vice chair? Is there a requirement to get a new chair and vice chair? Well, there's two questions. Is that a requirement? Because then feasibly people could serve in that role for more than 1 year. Or that, the second piece is that if that's not the case, then what's been customary, at least in my 7.5 years of being here, is that we rotate it. So at some point, some member of the committee is sort of like rotates through. Otherwise, we run into a place where we just don't have enough position. Like you kind of get forced into it. So first question, I guess, is can somebody just be in that role for, like, maybe somebody likes being the chair and they just want to be the chair for the next 3 years. Is that a problem?
Well, it's up to the EQC. So it's not there's no, policy or legal requirement that it needs to change.
Well, that's a good clarification, because I think we all have different talents on this team, and leading the meetings is certainly, a skill set in itself. So if we don't have to change it, then that begs the question: if Ryan wants to do it again, or I guess it's you or Janelle, because my term ends, so I'm ineligible anyway. So that's kind of what it boils down to, right?
So I'll just say that I have just taken on yet another leadership role on top of my other 12 leadership roles, and I'm steeped in working hard on, I'm just really overdone, but I'd be happy to be the vice chair. I just am not interested in being the chair at this time. And I know I need to take my rotation, and sometime during this current 4-year stint, I will do that. But I would like to not do it at this time.
I understand, and I think everybody is really well said. I think there's different roles at different times, and I think I'm fine to stay in the role. And the only thing I ask is if just please continue to give me feedback. I don't want it to seem like I'm in an unprecedented way continuing in this role, but not being open to any feedback or changes. So just please let me know if you have suggestions. And I think we also can look forward to the fact that we will have somebody new joining us too when we're able to fill Rebecca's position as well. So so that's something that we can look forward to. And James's baby is wonderful, I'm sure, and I'm delighted for him, but it won't be his baby. Like, eventually the baby will grow a little and maybe James will come back. So to Deb's point, I think it's a fair concern. And I hope that over time there are other people or timing changes and we see different opportunities for leadership, and all of that's good with me. So I'm comfortable if that's how we want to move forward. So is there a motion to come to a decision?
I'll motion if you guys want. It's pretty easy. So I make a motion to continue to have, we'll get formal, but to continue to have Ryan as our chair and Janelle as our vice chair. Commissioner, and you can put all the commissioner, whatever.
I second that motion to elect the chair and vice chair.
Okay, all in favor? Or do, oh,
Do
no,
we
you do that.
roll call? Okay. Commissioner Gaylord.
Aye.
Brugoli. Commissioner Martin.
Aye.
Commissioner Cabot.
Aye.
Commissioner London.
Aye.
And I'll vote aye also. So
Thank you.
Yay,
that's
thank you
great. Yay.
guys.
Yes,
You're
thank you.
welcome.
Great, Ryan. You're doing really great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
you're
you.
great.
Everybody's doing. I just feel like we're really working really well together. So I think that's the most important thing. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the meeting. I just want to note that I didn't see, normally at the end of the meeting you see something that says updates and things like that, and that wasn't on the agenda, so I wasn't sure if it was okay to ask for updates in the event that, because it's been routined, I thought people might come thinking there would be update opportunities and it's not actually stated. Is that Jane? Yeah, okay, so Tom came with an update he wanted to give. Is that okay, Rebecca? Are we allowed to do that? Okay, she says yes. So go ahead, Tom.
All right, thank you very much. I saw just the other day that Mayor Taylor submitted a comment letter to the California Energy Commission as the mayor of a REACH code city, and supporting that the California Energy Commission adopt an all-electric base code for the 2022 cycle, which would be 3 years ahead of their long-term plan. And if they follow up on that, and a number of cities are commenting in that direction, if they follow up on that, we won't have to implement a REACH code in order to get all electric new construction next time.
Yay.
Is there anything we can do to support it?
As individuals, we can write letters as well. And so I also submitted one like that. I think it gives the California Energy Commission members, the 5 members, the support they need to take the big steps that we noticed were such big steps when we took them, and that we even had to make compromises. And since we did that initial step with a very innovative all-electric code proposal by Rebecca and other staff, a lot of cities have moved that type of REACH code now, which is a very sophisticated and powerful one. And a number of them have eliminated those exceptions that we felt we had to make as a first mover in order to get it across the line here. So the Energy Commission will face that same kind of concern about, are they, should they compromise and things like that. And so the more support we're able to give them as individuals or entities, the better it is, because this is a bold move that we're asking for them to accelerate their process of no longer stranding new assets in new construction. And then that also frees us up, all these REACH code cities, more than 30 now, to be doing other innovation on different aspects of the REACH code, like the city of Santa Monica, who has now a proposal to require heat pump water heaters in anytime somebody puts a new solar photovoltaic installation on their roof. So they say, yes, you can put solar on your roof, and if it's more than 3 kilowatts, you must also be putting a heat pump water heater in there. So you're decarbonizing as well as electrifying to save your wallet. So, as well as solarizing to save your wallet. So there are a number of actions we can be taking in REACH codes. And for example, our Replace on Burnout Ordinance Action 1 in the Climate Action Plan is one of those types of things. So that was very great to see the council go through that effort to quickly approve the mayor signing a letter like that. And we can do it as individuals, but it also then raises the other issue for me, just a concern as I'm hearing more about climate change and how rapidly it's occurring. I'm sensing that need to move fast. And I learned from Actera about an interesting public outreach process they did called a design sprint, where they were able to organize an event that created a whole lot of public interaction and input on policy matters and design issues in a relatively rapid time. And I'd like us to agendize an action at some point for looking at how do we innovate in the area of speeding up the adoption of processes, because a task force is by its very nature a long-term, slow process. And the one for the heritage trees was all about taking people's property rights and subsuming them into the commons. And the things we're looking at for electrification do not do those things. They're different. They're not as onerous as what happened in heritage trees. So anyway, I would hope that we can agendize an item soon about exploring ways to meet our public outreach needs and interests that we all have and that the city has, but to meet them in a new and innovative rapid process, and to explore how to do that.
Thank you. Yes, Josie.
I have an update. So I was approached by someone who was a product manager at SunPower where I worked. We didn't overlap, but then he went on to work at Tesla and is now starting a company that is basically going to make it easy for cities to electrify their fleet vehicles. So they turn it into like similar to a PPA, which is a power purchase agreement. So taking the capital outlay out of the equation, they provide the vehicle, they provide the charging, they provide the maintenance for the thing, and then the city just pays on I think it's per mile basis for those vehicles. So it's a startup, and they're looking for a city to partner with, and they're interested in working with Menlo Park because they saw in our CAP that was part of what we're trying to achieve in action number 5. What I've heard from staff is they're just like, again, with the pandemic, they're just maxed out on time. So I'm just like throwing that out there. Janelle, I figured you would be interested, and I don't know how to move forward on this, but maybe there's a way for a smaller group to meet with the guy and see what it's all about and sort of filter it. So if we did come back to staff, it would just be, a 15-minute, here's what's offered, like here's how much time would be required for Menlo Park to take advantage of that. But
yeah,
so maybe that
subcommittee, so we can talk about it, when we meet.
Okay. But maybe, I don't know, would that be an item that EQC would take up, or?
I don't know. I'd also like to present it to PCE and see if any city in the whole of San Mateo County would like to take it on if there's one that has more bandwidth.
Okay, so you and I'll talk?
Yeah, I think so.
Deb?
Yeah, one thing I should mention that we haven't really done very, very much with this current EQC, but a lot of times we invite people in to talk to us about different solutions and different things. So I think that this is a good time to kind of, hear some outside voices like that and start inviting. Like, I wouldn't mind hearing what that guy was talking about. I don't know if
Yellow Tin.
Yellow Tin? Was it
Yeah,
like
so
Tin, T-I-N.
Okay.
Right, so that was Vishwas
Yeah.
Ganesan from
Yeah.
Yellow Tin.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, and maybe there's a ton of lots of other things like out there like that, but I think it would be really clever for us to start using the time to get somebody on the agenda for like 15-20 minutes and tell us about some of these, especially if they're like city partnership type things. I think that would be really, because we can start, we're getting the word's getting out about us, so then people are coming to us with solutions, and I think that our commission's a great place to explore that. So I would propose that maybe we even consider inviting that gentleman back, or your friend who's doing the EV vehicles for the fleet and different things like that, because it'd be good for us to know about those different things.
Okay.
Yeah, we can integrate it.
Rebecca, building off of the comments, I just have one question. So for example, in Tom's question, he raised the idea that another community, I think it was a city, Tom, has done the design sprint.
Oh, that was Actera, the environmental sustainability organization.
So, for example, like if we were to talk about something like that that has to do with public engagement, is it possible for us to invite Clay or somebody like, and I know it's not necessarily a guarantee, but is it possible for us to include a staff member that's relevant? So if we were talking about EV charging stations, if there's a department that that's relevant for, would we want to extend an invitation to somebody to attend, or would you be, would it exclusively be you who's liaising between those two groups? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So for the public engagement component, the city council already has, they're piloting a policy called the tiers approach. There's just, it's certain steps. It's not necessarily saying this is what you use in your toolkit. It just kind of gives you an idea. And so yeah, Clay can certainly speak to the tiers approach. And I think we do understand the urgency and all the other issues around it. And I mean, the city, yeah, I'm just trying to, again, understand what the EQC would like to hear, because we are trying to move the public engagement plan as quick as possible.
Yeah.
So, you know, and I don't know, maybe that's something that you can discuss.
Asha was more broad, and it was just if there's somebody who's relevant to a different department, would that all go through you, or would we?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. So like public engagement or some other, I think so. But again, given trying to rebuild the organization in a pandemic, I think you can ask, I think that's a difficult ask. I'll just say.
Does it hurt to ask, or is it okay to ask and then it just won't come if they don't have the time?
What? So, I mean, you can always ask. I think that's always a possibility. But I think the last few council meetings have just been very difficult. And I mean, even, I don't know, the last nights, it feels like it's gone all together for me these past 2 nights. But you know, I think those are good indicators for the level of staff capacity in this current pandemic and this current new work environment that we're all in as well. But again, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Okay, thank you.
So Ryan, you've kind of, I thought Deb's idea was a good one. I hadn't thought about what to do with the, you know, I couldn't quite figure out because I don't have enough experience on the commission. I don't have what Deb, you know, what Deb would just propose. I was like, oh, of course, that's obvious. We should do that. But is that something then that you would consider adding to the agenda? And if you did, would you let me know so then I can see if the guy wants to come?
Yeah, I think yes, and I wonder too if there are people that you would like, if there's ideas of who to bring, like these folks, maybe send them to me or to Janelle so that when we're having that conversation with Rebecca, we can work that into the agenda. Because one of the things I think is, it's helpful to know, like from a prioritization standpoint. So for example, like if we were going to prioritize speakers to bring in, to me, it would make sense to prioritize speakers that either help us address the CAP goals or help us address how to reach the CAP goals, right? So, and then obviously it's up to the person's time as well and whatever else is on the agenda. But that might be, I think it's always possible to have, not always, I shouldn't say that. It's possible to plan to have things, and we hope as the time goes on and we're able to prioritize our time towards the CAP that we can have more time towards those topics. And so I think that, yeah, just send them our way.
Okay, so just literally just connect you guys over email? Okay.
Yeah,
done.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm actually you're talking about for guest speakers, right? For like new things happening. Yeah. I'm also going to I've been playing around looking at this yellow tin thing, and they have a whole thing on cities, and it sounds like it's about enhancing knowledge amongst residents about the benefits and costs of clean energy technologies. So I think it might be worth just reaching out to them a little more. See, they took the time to come to our meeting, so obviously that might just be a good one. So I'm going to just suggest that. I'll send you an email so that it gets captured.
Okay.
And yeah, it's really actually, and it kind of makes the meetings a little bit also, so we're not all talking amongst ourselves about stuff. Like it kind of brings in some interesting thoughts and exploration. So.
Yep. No, that makes total sense. That is great feedback. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other updates before we adjourn the meeting? Okay. I think we can probably adjourn the meeting at the 4 of us at 9:12 is the time I have, Rebecca. Yay.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you all.
It's good to see everybody.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Stay cool.
Yeah.